Thank you, everyone, for showing up. This is a great turnout. We're excited to see everyone here. Thank you for coming to our open board meeting. We have a guest speaker coming. We have a guest speaker coming tonight. They're a few minutes late, so we're going to go ahead and begin with other business. And then, how many people are here to talk about the lake and fish? Raise your hands. How many people are here for e-bikes? Okay. Okay. All right. Well, we have a lot to talk about tonight, so we're looking forward to getting to that. We are going to begin, as we always do, with the Pledge of Allegiance. So if you would please rise, take off your hats, and our city manager, Aaron Brown, would you please come forward and lead us in the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Aaron. When you're speaking in the microphone, speak very close because it's loud. If you're speaking in the mic, speak close because it's loud. Yeah. Oops. All right, we will begin. If everyone can have your attention, please. We will begin with the verification of quorum. Everyone be quiet. We can hear better. Thank you. It is at max volume. We're going to verify quorum.
Sorry about that. Director Doherty?
Here.
Director Medved?
Here.
Director Cooney? Here. President Van Vliet?
Here.
Hearing four in favor, quorum met.
Perfect. All right, we're going to also, is there a motion to approve the minutes from the May meeting?
Motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor of approving the May minutes, say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Abstaining because I wasn't here.
All right, thank you. All right. Are our guests here yet? Not yet. So we are going to move our outside presentation up first, since I know most of you are here to learn about the lake, what's going on, what can be done. And so we have a number of experts that are coming. I want to point out some other people who are present in the meeting today. We have our city manager, Aaron Brown. He led us in the Pledge of Allegiance. We also have the general manager of the Elsinore Valley Municipal Water District, Greg Thomas, waving at the back. We have Director Darcy Burke. Darcy here? There she is, also waving at the back. And the others will be joining us shortly. We have the mayor? Oh, Mayor Mark Terry. All right, welcome, Mark. Great, thanks for coming. So we're going to move a couple things out of order until our guests get here, because we make that first. And one of the things I want to begin with is one of the things we do at all of our board meetings is we recognize an exceptional member of the month. And this month, this individual actually has received it before, but this individual had so much to do this last weekend. How many people participated in Fiesta Days? How many people participated in Country Fest? Right. So tonight we're recognizing Doug Schultz. As you may know, this was the first event in Canyon Lake history that we've done, the first music festival, four bands, all name brand bands, and for what I've heard from most residents, one of the best events we've held in our community. And Doug's background is Doug was what station are you with, Doug? In San Diego. KSON. And he also has been putting on a number of music events over the years, 20 some odd years. And we are so fortunate to have Doug as a member of our community. And so he sponsors the concerts at the Lodge. And he also was the moving force in the last 2 years to get this going. And through his leadership, we were able to get a Country Fest into Canyon Lake. And let's all give Doug a round of applause. And Doug, come up and get your picture. Either one. Let me see this first.
Test. Good evening. To all the awesome Canyon Lake residents who attended Canyon Lake Country Fest, thank you for making the biggest live music event in Canyon Lake history. I appreciate so many of you who reached out after the show with comments that included words like Major League and the best. I'd like to acknowledge all of the hardworking POA staff, especially Tiffany Cribbs, David Cardoza, and Laura Flores, for always being there and for being such a pleasure to work with, and helping make this first ever country music festival an accomplished success. Board of Directors, please know this: I wouldn't do this event if Eric Kazikoff were not GM. Thank you for this. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Doug. And for those of you who weren't there, it was estimated there were 3,000 people present. It was the most people anyone has ever seen in Holiday Harbor. Had about 150 boats on the water, and it was just an outstanding event. Again, thank you, Doug. We really appreciate it.
And I think we're still waiting for our scientists to arrive. So we're, like Bill said, we're mixing things up. Thank you, everybody, for coming. We do a thing here, Employee of the Quarter, and any employee here can nominate any other employee. And so I want to read two nominations that this person received. There were multiple nominations for this Employee of the Quarter. And I think these nominations say it better than I can say, so I'm just going to read it. Laura, our esteemed lodge manager, Laura Flores. Laura has been the most impactful boss. She goes above and beyond as only a boss, not only as a boss, but a mentor. When I was graduating high school, Laura showed up at every award supporting me off the clock. Anytime she saw an opportunity for a scholarship, she sent it my way. She truly has cared for me in every way and has been one of my biggest supporters. Now coming back to work for the summer, I'm grateful she has helped me get where I am today and really transform the lighthouse. Just a year ago, she was on her hands and knees planting plants outside the fountain for the grand opening, and I saw you do that, Laura. So this is a true statement. And now the lodge is an amazing food and drink place establishment. Thank you for all the hard work. And she's already crying, so I'm going to read another one. These nominations really spoke for themselves. So I haven't read other employees' words about the Employee of the Quarter, but these just kind of spoke to me. So they say it so well. Laura, manager of the Canyon Lake Lodge, goes above and beyond every single day. I've never met someone so dedicated to a job and all of the people around her. She gives her 110% every single day without fail, and even under the most amount of stress, still treats her employees with the utmost respect. She's extremely considerate and accommodating and is the prime example of the perfect manager. She presents herself so amazingly well and greatly pushes everyone to be their absolute best in the most respectable way. She handles the worst situations with so much grace, and it is truly a role model for everyone around her. So please congratulate our Employee of the Quarter, Laura Flores.
So I'd like to make an announcement as well. One of the things our board met in executive session this afternoon, beginning at noon. We went till about 5:30. And one of the things, and we talked about all the issues, all the concerns among members. We do appreciate all of the letters to the board that a number of you have written, and we hear you. And we want to let you know that we're taking these concerns very seriously. We are equally concerned, and we wake up every day and look at the lake and are saddened by it, and want to do whatever we can to help this community, as it's, in our opinion, at least in my opinion, the most important amenity we have is the lake. And so it's why we're here. One of the things that we agreed to do is, first of all, say thank you for speaking up. We heard you. And one of the things we're going to do, and this is a joint effort between the City of Canyon Lake and the POA, is this coming Saturday, June 7th, we're going to sponsor a community cleanup day, where anyone who wants to volunteer to come out as a community, come together, help us solve the problem, the dead fish and things that are in the lake. We're going to have 4 different bins staged around the lake, one at Sierra Park, one at Holiday Harbor, one at Indian Beach, and one at Eastport Harbor. Each of those 4 places, they will have a dumpster bin, and we will be handing out bags and gloves for people to go out. Any bass masters who are here who want to help out on the boats and go help clean, we want to bring the community together to help clean up the lake. In response, one of the things that we in the city agreed to do is we'll be feeding everyone pizza at Holiday Harbor when we're complete. It'll be this Saturday from 9 to noon. And so please tell your friends if you want to come out and help. It's something that we can all do as a community to help with this problem.
You're good.
I'm good? Okay.
Yeah.
Community patrol. All right, our guests are here. They're in the gate. They'll be here shortly. Ken Toller? You want to come forward? Zach, come forward and give us a community patrol update, please. Community patrol update from Ken Toller and Zach.
Good evening. My name is Zachary Wells. Good evening. We're good? All right. My name is Zachary Wells. I'm reading the Community Patrol report in regards to April 2025. We issued 25 citations in regard to speeding. We issued 35 citations in regard to parking, with 44 calls for service in regards to parking. We had 41 times our gate officers reported that somebody failed to comply with the entry policies to enter the community. 8 times people were offered the option to leave and enter in properly. 8 times people refused to do so, so 8 citations were issued. We received 32 calls for service in regards to e-bikes, with 23 citations issued. We had 18 calls in regards to noise complaints, with 2 citations issued. We had a total of 284 service calls for the month. 31 times we were unable to locate. 77 citations were issued to guests. 3 citations were issued to service providers. 64 citations were issued to members. 42 of those citations were warnings. 4 reports of vandalism were filed for the month. We had a total of 18 property damage, which are typically gate arm strikes at our gate. We had a total of 61 miscellaneous violations in the community as well too. We issued 1 citation for people failing to stop for a school bus stop sign, with 39 other citations issued for people failing to stop at regular stop signs. 1 citation was issued for illegal riding and towing in the community. 84 passes were confiscated at the gate by the gate guards. 14 citations were issued for misuse of access identification. The staff spent about 55 additional minutes over at the gate trying to assist with entry, 45 of those minutes at main gate, 10 of those minutes at East Gate.
So Zach, in comparing those results to the prior month, it looks like our e-bike citations are up almost double, which is good. That's been the main area of focus for us. Also notice member citations are down about 50%, but guest citations are up about 50%. I guess, is that a sign of summer?
Absolutely. We're having a lot more guests coming in.
Okay. Any other member comments or questions? Any questions from the audience about community patrol statistics or information? All right, thank you guys. All right, it's our pleasure to introduce our guest speakers tonight. We're moving this forward since this is the most important item, the most discussed item in the community, and that is we brought in some scientists from GEI, also from Lejewa, and they are going to give us an update on the situation with the lake, what's the truth about alum, and what can be done about it. So, gentlemen, if you please introduce yourselves and.
Okay. Yes, my name's Rick Wetzel.
Okay, if everyone could please appreciate the understanding concern. The audio system is what we have. So if everyone can, if you're not speaking, excuse me. We need to have quorum. We need to have decorum. Okay, so if you can't hear and speak, please come forward. We are doing the best we can with the sound system that we have. Okay. All right, thank you. Turn the AC off. Thank you for clarification.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Rick Wetzel. I am the interim administrator for the Lake Elsinore and San Jacinto Watersheds Authority, and I'm also the administrator for the Lake Elsinore and Canyon Lake TMDL Task Force. I think you guys all want to get started with the science, so I'm going to quickly just introduce our two consultants that we brought in from GEI. They've been working on this lake for about a decade with water quality monitoring and analysis, so I think they have a really good handle on what goes on in Canyon Lake. And with that, I'd like to introduce John Rudolph.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay? All right, great. I'll speak as loud as I can here. So yeah, my name's John Rudolph. I'm with GEI. I'm an aquatic ecologist, and I've been working here, as Rick said, on Canyon Lake as well as down in Lake Elsinore for the last 10 years, working on the TMDL nutrient monitoring program there. We're up here on the lake every other month, so 6 times a year we do some TMDL monitoring here on the lake. Looking at nutrients and various other water quality parameters, pH, dissolved oxygen, and lots of other things. And we've been generating annual reports on all of that data for the last 10 years now. So there's lots of data out there. And I have about, back 25 plus years experience in aquatic ecology, looking at various different water bodies here in Southern California, including the marine environment as well. Lots of different lakes. And my background is in marine ecology and got involved in freshwater work probably about 20 years ago. So got my degree here, master's in science down at San Diego State back in 1995. So it's been quite a while. And this is Chris, my colleague.
All right, you guys can hear me? All right. Well, pleasure to be here, have the opportunity to share, entertain any questions you have. And as you've heard, I've worked with John and also with Lejewa here for over 10 years, John with about 30 years coming up as an aquatic scientist. I'm a toxicologist by training, a graduate degree and undergraduate degree in ecology, toxicology, We've actually helped run a toxicology lab for years, so we've worked with fish and potential impacts to fish almost our whole career. Focused on impacts from algae blooms and chemicals and other things too. So we'll be here to talk to you a little bit about that today. So glad to entertain the questions and share with you a little bit about what we've learned.
So I thought I'd start off maybe before we get to the presentation here. So some of the questions that you guys might have could be answered with the short presentation I'm going to give you guys. So essentially, it's going to be a summary of kind of the alum applications we do here on the lake, what their benefit is to the lake, and some of the challenges that we've been involved with over the years for that. And then we'll get into some of the issues with the algae bloom towards the end of that and talk about that for a bit. And then I think we can just open it up to questions and see what you guys have to say and see if we got some good answers for you. So if you wouldn't mind going to the first slide there. So that's reiterating what I just said. So just a brief overview of the alum application and some of the challenges we've had in the last couple of years. So yeah, so the alum application has been going on here in Canyon Lake since 2013. Started back then, and we do it essentially twice a year. We do it once in the spring and once in the fall. And the reason for that is the lakes are dynamic. They go through these cycles year after year where they stratify, they de-stratify. And when this happens, there's different nutrient cycles that happen that the nutrients then become available to the algae. So algae feed on nutrients, specifically nitrogen and phosphorus, which is in the lake, comes in from the watershed. Also, you can get some internal recycling within the lake where you get nutrients which come up out of the sediment. And so what happens during the summer when the surface layers warm, the bottom layers stay cool, you get something called stratification. I'm sure you've heard of that before, right? You get this temperature difference between top and bottom. And what happens is that in the bottom layers, a lot of these nutrients from the sediments, and there's not much mixing between these layers. There's almost like a line where they just don't mix with each other. So you get some nutrients that are building up from the sediments in this bottom layer. So in the fall, before the lake destratifies, as the surface water starts to cool, you'll get something called, in colloquial terms, lake will flip or destratify. And so the nutrients that are in the bottom then get mixed up into the water column. And so what we try to do with the fall alum applications is we get out there, we try to do this before the lake destratifies. So we are adding alum to the lake, it falls through the water column, and it's sequestering or picking up phosphorus as it does, so it binds it up. So it's not bioavailable anymore. All that then falls to the bottom. So we try to do that before this large nutrient sequestration layer at the bottom gets mixed into the water column. In the springtime, you've had all these winter storms that are coming through, so you've got nutrients coming down from the watershed, from the San Jacinto River and coming in from Salt Creek into the eastern arm, so you get nutrients that are loaded into the lake over the winter. And so in the summer, in the springtime, as the water's starting to warm up, you've got these nutrients in the water. That's when you typically would see an algae bloom happening. And so what we try to do then is try to hit the lake with the alum before the water starts to warm, when the algae is really going to take off, to strip out some of those nutrients out of the water before the water warms up and we get the algae blooms. So that's the essential strategy behind 2 applications per year. And so if you would go to the next slide. Now, alum is something that's used nationwide. It's used in lakes all across the country. This is a statement from the North American Lake Management Society, which is the foremost kind of lake scientist society that I'm involved with. Chris is involved with as well. They put a statement out on alum a number of years back saying that, yes, it's a safe application. It's something used, if it's used appropriately, it's very effective at removing phosphorus from the water column and removing the nutrients that the algae would otherwise be able to utilize. And so I just wanted to throw this up here to say that alum applications are something that are very common. They're used safely in lots of lakes across the United States and have been used for a long time. They're a known quantity. And so what we did before, this is back in 2013, before we started the alum applications, we did some toxicity testing on this because we wanted to make sure, what's the right application, what's the right concentration that we're going to apply to the lake. So we did some testing in a laboratory with alum at the concentrations below and above what we're going to be using here on Canyon Lake. Now, the Canyon Lake concentration that we do when we get out there and apply alum to the lake is 30 milligrams per liter of alum. And so we tested up to 40 in these laboratory tests to see, is it going to have an impact on these animals that we expose the alum to in the laboratory. So these are fathead minnows, which is a little fish in its very early life stage, so very, very sensitive at its early life stage. That's one species we tested. The other one is a water flea, which is called Daphnia. It's like this little like zooplankton, a little shrimp, cladoceran it's called, that swims around in the water column. It's common in lakes such as Canyon Lake. And we expose them to various concentrations, everything from, as you can see here, from a lab control, which has 0 alum in it. It's just straight up clean lab water. And then we dose them at different concentrations all the way up to well above what we're going to be applying here in Canyon Lake. And across the board, we've got 2 different endpoints that we're looking at here. Survival is one of them. You know, when you add alum at these various concentrations, do these test animals, do they just die? That's one endpoint that we're looking at. The other one is called a sublethal endpoint. So reproduction in the case of the Daphnia, the water flea, and growth in the case of the fathead minnow, the fish. And so we didn't see any reduction in either survival or growth or reproduction at any of these concentrations we tested up to and above what we're going to be using in Canyon Lake. So there was no toxicity results that from the alum that we're going to apply to this lake. And this was known. I mean, we didn't expect there to be anything because we know that alum is fairly safe when you add it to at the concentrations that we're going to be adding it to. And so I just wanted to point this out that this testing was done beforehand. The alum is not causing toxicity at the concentrations that we're using here in Canyon Lake. And so what you see here, this is a graph showing you all of the various applications of alum that happened at Canyon Lake starting back in 2013 all the way to present. So I think the April, can't see that last one here because of the curtain, but maybe up until they say April of last year, it looks like. What these bars on the bottom are showing you is each one of those pairs of bars, there's a red bar and a green bar. The red bar is the concentration of phosphorus in the water column before the application happened. The blue bar is the concentration of phosphorus in the water column after the application happened. And what you can see in almost every case across the board, starting back in 2013 to just last year, the phosphorus concentration in the water column drops as a result of adding alum to the water. What you see up on the top, the bigger graph with the 2 box plots there, that's showing you, again, this is just summarizing what's on the bar chart below, taking all these different data and summarizing them into 2 different bars. And as you can see, before you add alum, concentration is higher. After you add alum, the concentration of phosphorus drops in the water column. So alum is very effective at, so you're adding it as a aluminum sulfate. That's what alum is. It's aluminum sulfate. When you add it to the water column, it binds with the phosphorus to form something called aluminum phosphate. That's an inert chemical that once it bonds with it, it doesn't let go. It forms a flock that then drops to the bottom and doesn't let go. It's not bioavailable to any organism in the water column after that. And so that's what's happening here, stripping it out of the water column. And this has been very effective in Canyon Lake at doing so. And I have a few more slides to kind of push this point home. What you're showing here is this is a ratio. And so this is a known ratio. It's called the Redfield ratio. Now, there's a ratio between nitrogen and phosphorus that if you get above about 7, it's considered a phosphorus limited. There's enough phosphorus that's been removed from the water column that it prohibits or limits the algae growth. And so what you can see in the table here is the measurements that we've taken. There's many measurements of water quality in Canyon Lake before we even started the alum application program back in 2013. You can see that ratio there in the main lake and the East Bay is 4.6 and 6.5. Okay, that's below 7. And it's about 7 is that ratio. If you get above that, there's limited phosphorus in the water column, and which limits the algae growth. You can see after we started adding alum to the program, this ratio goes way up, well beyond what's considered the quote-unquote Redfield limited ratio of 7. And so we're in a good state now. This being up at 24 is well above what we consider to be a limitation on the growth of algae. So again, alum added to the water column in Canyon Lake is benefiting the lake by reducing the phosphorus in the water column. There we go. Very, very ominous. Yes. So another graph, just kind of pointing out again what you see up in the top right there. This is the endpoint that we're trying to get to. So chlorophyll, as you know, chlorophyll is a compound that plants use to photosynthesize, and you can find it in terrestrial plants. You can find it in your plants in your house. You can find it in your grass in your lawn. Algae also contain chlorophyll, and so chlorophyll in this graph is a surrogate for measuring algal biomass. So the lower the chlorophyll level in the water column, the lower the algal biomass. And so what this is showing you here, as you can see, starting back in 2011, we were somewhere up around 60 to 80 micrograms per liter of chlorophyll in the water column. So that's a fairly significant algal biomass in the water column. Now, starting in 2013, you can see, which is the third line over on the graph to the right, you can see after we started adding al into the water column, the chlorophyll concentration started to drop. Now, what you see, that red line in there, that's at 25 micrograms per liter, that red horizontal line across the graph. That is the limit that was set in the 2004 TMDL, which is it stands for total maximum daily load, which is what the Regional Water Quality Control Board set as a standard that we're trying to get below here to consider this as an acceptable level of algae in the lake. As you can see, we've gotten below that starting back in about 2018, started to drop. And we've been consistently either hovering right around that or below and meeting that TMDL target for a number of years now. Again, pointing towards the fact that algae or alum is really doing its job on phosphorus, which is therefore having its effect on the algae in the water column. So benefit, this also not only has a benefit to Canyon Lake, it also has a benefit to downstream Lake Elsinore, because the water that goes over the dam makes its way down to Lake Elsinore, obviously. Now, about 90% of the drainage area to Lake Elsinore comes through Canyon Lake. And so if we're sequestering phosphorus here and binding it up, that's less phosphorus that's making its way down to Lake Elsinore too. So there's a very great benefit as well, not only to Canyon Lake, but also to the downstream Lake Elsinore. You can see that in the graph there as well, where you're looking at total nitrogen as well as total phosphorus dropping below the nutrient load to Lake Elsinore as well. So that's the good part. We can see over time, chlorophyll has dropped in the lake, phosphorus have dropped in Canyon Lake. So this is all as a result of us having this alum addition program to the lake. So we've had some very good benefits as a result of that. Now, on the flip side of that, there have been some challenges. And we're going to go into that now here a little bit. It's not completely clean, but one of the things, as I mentioned earlier, we had this thing where we have the spring application trying to get to the phosphorus that come into the lake during the stormwater season. We also have the fall application to try to sequester that phosphorus that's in the bottom stratified layer before it destratifies. There's a timing challenge here, especially in the springtime, because what we want to do is you want to hit that the lake with alum before the lake or late enough in the season that we're getting past the major storms. So you don't want to have an alum addition and then you got a major storm that comes in after that, just adds a whole bunch more phosphorus to the lake. So we want to push it as far as we can into the spring so we're past any of the major storms that happen. But at the same time, the farther you push it into the spring and getting closer to the summer, the water's starting to warm up that whole time, right? So as soon as the water starts to warm up, the algae photosynthesis, the algae reproduction is going to start to creep up as well. So there's this pretty narrow window that we're trying to hit, just late enough, but not too late. And so we want to avoid that situation, for example, back in, say, March of 2014. As you can see here, the black line right before March in 2014 is when we added alum. A couple weeks later, we had a major storm that came through, which you can see a spike. This is showing phosphorus concentrations in the lake. Right after the alum application, we had a very big spike in phosphorus because of that large storm, dumped a bunch of sediment and a bunch of phosphorus into the lake. And so essentially we had stripped out the phosphorus, but then it was just added right back in again. So we're trying to avoid that situation. We've got a pretty narrow window of trying to be late enough, but not too late. So there's some timing challenges here that every year we come across this challenge trying to time this just right. What was that? Is that what happened, this year? Oh, no, not this year. Not this year. Yeah, this year we had most of our storms came February, March, and I don't remember the exact date of the alum application. March 24th was our alum application this year. So we were able to get in after the major storms this year. Sorry, can you repeat that? I was just showing you an example. Okay, this is an example of the timing that we're trying to get you. I can get you that data if you'd like to see it. Okay, so let me just get through the.
Let's let him finish the presentation, then we'll take questions after,
Yeah,
please.
I'll gladly take questions as soon as we're done here. We're getting close to the end here. So, the other issue as far as the timing or the challenges that we're dealing with is the floating flock, which a lot of you probably saw this year. And so this, as I mentioned, the timing of the window is important. And if we try to push this too late and the algae start to bloom, what you do have when you add alum to the lake after an algae bloom has started is you can have a couple things. Carbon dioxide bubbles start to form when there's this high organic content in the water already. What that happens is it brings together the algae cells. They start to stick together, and when they're forming these bubbles, they float to the top. And not only that, when you do have algae, I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but algae actually produce oxygen, right? So during the day, they're photosynthesizing, they're producing oxygen as a byproduct of that photosynthesis. At nighttime, they actually switch and they use the oxygen at night and they give off CO2. But during the day, when the sun comes up, they start to photosynthesize. They give off oxygen, and this oxygen can form bubbles. So when you add flock and you flock together the algae while they're still there and they're photosynthesizing, these bubbles can float them to the surface. And I believe that's what happened this year when we saw the extensive flock, as you can see in some of these pictures here, that happened was we had the algae bloom was starting already. The alum was added, and because of their flocking together, we saw them float because of these bubbles that were forming in that matrix, that organic matrix. So that's one of the other challenges we're dealing with. The other one is the fish die-offs. And so what I wanted to point out here is we've had April of last year, November of last year, and then this current one that we're having, we've had fish die-offs in each of those years, or each of those time periods. And so what I wanted to point out was the timeline between when we started to see, when the alum application happened and when we saw the fish die off varied between these different events. Okay, so for example, the fish die off that happened in April of 2024, this fish kill started on the last day of the alum application. Okay, the one that happened in November of 2024, this was about 4 weeks after the alum application had concluded. And the one that just happened here recently, this April and May, was about 3 weeks after the alum application was concluded. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that when alum is added to the water column, it reacts fairly quickly. Within about 3 to 4 hours, any of the aluminum that's in that alum flock or alum application reacts and falls to the bottom. So it's actually out of solution and falling to the bottom because it flocculates fairly quickly. Within a day or two, that aluminum is gone out of the water column. Okay. So when we're seeing fish kills that are happening 4 weeks after, 3 weeks after, there's a very, very low chance that this is related to the alum application and the aluminum as a result of that that's added to the water. Okay. Not only to mention that the concentration that we're adding, as I mentioned earlier, is well below what we know to be a concentration of concern for aluminum to fish. So the one thing that I wanted to point out was the one that happened in April 2024. So pH and total organic carbon and hardness actually have a pretty big effect on the toxicity of aluminum. And so as I'll show you in the next slide, don't go to it quite yet, but just to point out, in the next slide, I'm going to talk about this April 2024 event in a little bit more detail. So let's go back one slide. So let me finish off this one real quick. So the other thing that we know is a couple of these events, specifically the one in April 2024 and the one in November 24, these were exclusively shad. Okay, the one that's happening right now is different. There's some larger fish that are dying off this time. The ones that happened in April and November of last year were exclusively shad. Now we know that shad are very, very sensitive to water quality issues, specifically dissolved oxygen and temperature. And not only that, in the springtime, it's well known that shad, because this is their spawning season, after they've spawned, that's a very energetically heavy burden on fish when they're in their spawning season. So at that point, they're weakened anyway. And sometimes even just lakes that are not having alum applications, you do see shad die-offs occasionally during the springtime because of this energetic weakened condition that they're in because of their spawning behavior. So I just wanted to point that out as we continue on, that is something that's well known about specifically threadfin shad, which you do have here in this lake. Now, the two most recent die-offs, the one that we had in November of last year, and then the one that's going on right now, these were, I'm highly confident that these two fish die-offs were not a result of alum application. The one from November 2024, this was more than likely due to a short-term low dissolved oxygen issue in the lake, because that's when the lake destratifies. As I mentioned, you get that stratification over the summer, and those bottom layers, the sediment uses up a lot of oxygen, and there's not any mixing that's going on between those top and bottom layers. So this bottom layer of the water, and this is a natural process, not just Canyon Lake, natural processes in most lakes. When you get this stratification, the dissolved oxygen gets very low in those bottom layers. When the lake destratifies, all that bottom water that's low dissolved oxygen then mixes up into the water column. So you can have, maybe for a day or two, you can have some fairly low oxygen in the whole water column all the way up to the surface because of this destratification. And we know, being involved in this lake for the last 10 years or so, that destratification event usually happens in either late October or early November almost every year. And that's a fact. I can show you the data for that. Now, the fish die-off they're having right now, I'm 99% confident this is a result of what's called golden algae. And this is a very very specific algae that we really haven't seen in Canyon Lake before, and it gives off a toxin that's called an ichthyotoxin. Ichthyotoxin is something that's toxic to fish. It's also toxic to zooplankton, can be toxic to amphibians. Anything that essentially has gills, golden algae can be toxic to, and it's very, very toxic, especially to fish, because what it does is it binds to the gills and it damages the gills to the point where it appears as if the fish are gulping for air or because of low dissolved oxygen, because the oxygen diffusion across the gill membrane is not happening anymore. So it appears as if there's low oxygen in the water, but it's not that at all. In fact, the oxygen was pretty high when we went out and measured it right out of this fish gill. What's happening is the golden algae is giving off a toxin that damages the gills to where they can't respirate appropriately. Okay, so that's what's going on now, and we've gone out, we've collected samples in the lake, and the golden algae concentrations were high enough, based on literature advice and what I know from a similar fish kill that happened down in Lake Elsinore that was also related to golden algae back in 2019, where we had tons and tons of fish that were removed from Canyon Lake, or from Lake Elsinore down there. That was also a golden algae issue that happened right after a big nutrient influx in the lake because of the Holy Fire, if you remember that. That lasted about 3 weeks to 4 weeks, I believe it was, and then went away. We've never seen golden algae there again. It's been 6 years now. So we know from November 2024 and the April 2025 current fish kill that's going on, these two were not related to alum at all. Now going on to the next slide. Aluminum toxicity. So now I'm talking about the April 2024 event. This is the one that was just exclusively shad. Okay. What you're seeing over on the right-hand side, I'll get to your question in a minute. Over here on the right-hand side, this is a graph showing you 4 locations where we sampled water in the lake after this fish kill had started, okay? And the blue bar is the aluminum concentration that was measured, the total aluminum concentration that was measured in the water column at those 4 samples. The CMC, this stands for a chronic maximum criteria. This is a threshold that, based on the pH of the water, based on the organic TOC, the total organic carbon of the water, and the hardness of the water, we can calculate where the threshold should be where you would start to see aluminum toxicity in the water column. As you can see, Eastport Park and Holiday Harbor, no problem. The CMC was much higher, the aluminum concentration was much lower than the threshold at which we'd start to see toxicity. The other 2 spots, Sierra Park and Vacation Wrangler, which is up by the Northern Causeway, you can see the acute concentration at which you might start to see toxicity was fairly close to what we saw for those 2 samples. And there's a possibility that, because this was about 2 days after the fish kill started, there's a possibility that concentration could have been above the threshold for acute toxicity for those two locations in the lake. So my point is that for this specific event, there's the possibility, and if you remember back to my previous slide as well, this fish kill happened right at the end, like the last day of the alum application. So there is a possibility for this one event that for those 2 locations, there was a short-term minor die-off related to aluminum because of the alum application at that time. Okay, and so, but we are able to calculate this, and this was a very short term, and as I mentioned, it was shad only at this time. Okay, so this slide is specifically about the event that's going on right now. Okay, so we've gone out, we've collected data on 2 different occasions. We collected data back in April when this first started. I went back out again about 3 weeks ago, collected some more samples. And based on the data that we're seeing, we collected water quality parameters like dissolved oxygen, pH, temperature, many other things like that, aluminum. We actually collected some of the gill tissue from the fish the dead fish that we collected to see if maybe aluminum was building up over time. I can rule out, based on the data that we're seeing, dissolved oxygen was high. So dissolved oxygen was not an issue. It was high enough, there shouldn't have been a problem. There was no ammonia, which can be another issue. Sulfides were not an issue. Those were well below any kind of concentration of concern based on the data that we collected. Aluminum also, as I just mentioned in the previous slide, aluminum was well below the acute toxicity threshold that we might expect to see some toxicity for fish. So aluminum was not an issue. And again, this was 3 weeks after the alum application. So even that alone might tell you it's likely not alum that caused the issue. We're still waiting on the gill tissue that we collected from the dead fish to see what those results are going to look like. And then finally, golden algae. And like I mentioned earlier, I highly believe that it's golden algae that's causing the issue that we're having right now. We did see golden algae present in these samples, and just the presence alone of golden algae is cause to be concerned. But yeah, we were seeing concentrations up to about 8,700 cells per mil, which is fairly high for golden algae. And again, these give off toxins and are known to be able to kill fish. So I'm fairly confident that what we're seeing right now is not the result of alum at all, but a result of a golden algae bloom in the lake. Maybe we'll stop there for the moment before I go into this next. There's only one more slide, but maybe I'll stop and ask some questions. That was a lot. I know, a lot to take in.
If you have a question, there's a gentleman in the back who's been raising his hand for a long time. If you could please, so that everyone can hear, including people who are online, come up to the podium here, press the red button and ask your question. We'll take.
Yeah,
Take
it's hard to hear people in the back.
Thank you.
Yeah.
While I can appreciate all of the back analysis, what we haven't heard is what are we doing to move forward?
Mhm.
We just spent an entire Memorial Day weekend with no lake.
Okay. Mhm.
You've just said our best and greatest asset is the lake. And we still don't have answers as to how we move forward, how this gets cleaned. Maybe it is on the last slide, but we just haven't heard any of that. We've heard about 24, we've heard about 25. What about now, and how do we get back to using our greatest asset?
Yeah. So the reason I wanted to go through all of this was to kind of give you some context about what we're talking about here. So in order to figure out how to move forward, we need to know what the issues are in the first place. And so if it's a low dissolved oxygen issue, we take one path. If it's aluminum toxicity, okay, we take a different path. If it's golden algae, okay, that's something different. So I went through all of this to kind of explain what we're talking about here before we get into solutions. Now, when you're talking about golden algae, this is a problem that's known not only here in Canyon Lake, but it's a problem that's gone on. Texas has had a lot of these issues. There's been issues here, other lakes in Southern California that have golden algae issues. This is a tough one. Golden algae is something that, you know, there's no silver bullet that you can just add to the water and it's going to go away. Okay. The one thing we do know about the biological cycle and the ecology of golden algae is that it does prefer lakes that are, or waters that are slightly saline. So you're getting up into, they're not completely fresh, but we're starting to get some salts introduced to it. Now this lake is about, I'd say, 1/2 part per 1,000 of salinity, which is not high at all, really, but it's on the lower end of what golden algae would consider to be available to colonize. The other issue we do know about golden algae also is they prefer colder waters. And so you tend to see golden algae blooming in lakes that or winter months, say January, February, March. Once you start getting into later months when the water starts to warm up, the blooms tend to dissipate. And so I can't say that you're not going to have a golden algae issue again. But like I mentioned earlier, there was one 6 years ago on Lake Elsinore, and it's never showed up again since then. Well, the solution is ultimately the main issue when you're dealing with algae is to reduce nutrients in the water column, right? That's the ultimate solution. Get to the source of the problem. If there's no nutrients, you're not going to have algae. Now you've got a huge watershed that dumps into Canyon Lake from two different areas, right? You got the eastern arm, Salt Creek. You got the San Jacinto River, a very large watershed. So there's lots of nutrient sources coming in. Not that we're addressing those. There's many different I guess they're called BMPs, which are ways to control nutrients up in the watershed before they get to the lake. Those are already in process. Now, alum is a solution. It's an in-lake solution that you're dealing with nutrients that do make it to the lake. You're trying to suppress those. And so we're trying to hit this from two different areas. We're trying to do source control, look up into the watersheds. What are the ways that we can get property owners, agriculture, whatever is up on the watershed to reduce their nutrient loads as they come down into the watershed. And then also dealing with the ones that do make it through down here. So ultimately, solution is we need to control nutrients in the watershed.
Hi, how are you?
Yes. doing well.
I saw a lot of examples about the East Lake and the Main Lake, but I didn't see any examples of your treatments in the North Ski area, and I think that lake looks pretty good. Second part to my question is, if you're setting Lake Elsinore as your gold standard, I highly suggest you
not.
raise that bar, because that lake's disgusting.
No. Okay. Well, just for the record, I never said Lake Elsinore was great water quality. Okay. The reason I brought that up is because they did have a similar golden algae issue, 6 years back.
But to follow up on this, because I did have a question. There's a difference between the North Lake, the North Ski Lake,
Yes.
and I think that's worth answering, please.
Yeah. So I don't believe that there's any alum applications going on in the northern ski area, or are there, Rick? They do apply alum up there as well, north of the causeway. So as far as golden algae getting up into the northern causeway, so now I'm just speculating here. My thought would be there's a fairly narrow restriction in the water pathway as it comes through from the northern causeway into Lake Elsinore through culverts, right? So there's the possibility that there's a positive flow there, which is pushing water into the lake. So for algae to get from the lake and basically move upstream, right, into that northern causeway, algae are not like fish where they can swim upstream, right? So they're just kind of floating around in whatever direction the water is flowing. So I would imagine it's fairly hard for algae to get through that causeway when there's a positive flow coming downstream in the first place. Now, that's all just my speculation. But yeah. Go ahead.
How you guys doing tonight?
Yeah.
My question is, you were talking about the alum binding and everything floating to the bottom. Does that build up over the years? Does it dissipate? How's that work?
Yeah, so yes, it does. It builds up over time. And there's about a 5 centimeter, from what we know of Canyon Lake and some former studies that have been done, there's about a 5 centimeter accumulation of sediment that comes down from the watershed per year. So each year you're adding 5 centimeters of sediment to the lake, which covers up the previous aluminum that was there previously. Now there's a benefit also to that aluminum falling down to the bottom, the alum falling to the bottom, because as I mentioned earlier, internal cycling of nutrients within a lake is one of the main sources of nutrients to the lake, not only coming in from the watershed above, but you do have nutrients that flux out of the sediment when there's low dissolved oxygen at the bottom. So if you're having this aluminum, this alum that falls to the bottom, it essentially forms like a small cap. It's about maybe 1 to 2 millimeters of alum that forms as a layer on the bottom of the sediment. That forms as a cap so that when those nutrients do start to come up out of the water column, it can sequester some of them before they get to the water column. So yes, it does build up over time, but that can be a good thing.
Thank you.
I would just note that the amount of natural sediment coming in from runoff far exceeds the amount of buildup from the aluminum.
Yeah, so that's a good point, Rick. So one thing I forgot to mention as I was talking earlier. So aluminum is the third most abundant element in the Earth's crust. It's about 8%. So just any sediment that's coming down from the watershed already has 8% aluminum in it, which is way more than we even add as a result of alum. So
Yeah, I got a little talk. There are serious concerns that need to be considered before we continue relying on this approach. Number one, alum doesn't fix the root of the problem. Two, it's risks to fish and wildlife. Three, we're covering up the problem with a chemical blanket. Alum settles into the bottom of the lake, locks up the phosphorus, but with repeated application, we're slowly covering the bottom of the Canyon Lake in a layer of aluminum-based algae sludge. That affects tiny organisms that live in the sediment, and which are important food source for fish, birds, and over time, good damage of lake natural balance. Four, it's expensive and temporary. Let's be honest, alum treatments are not cheap. Canyon Lake Property Owners Association, Elsinore Valley Municipal Water District are spending thousands to apply alum again and again, but alum treatments don't last. Well, we'll need to keep doing them every few years unless we get serious about long-term solutions. Five, we can do better. Right here in Canyon Lake, instead of relying on chemicals, we could expand shoreline buffer zones with native plants to natural filter runoff. We need better solutions. The alum's not working. It's temporary Band-Aid.
You want to comment on that? If I could go ahead. No, I'll jump in, and that's, point well taken. It is not, it is cumulative over time, though, so it does build up over time in the sediments, and that's a benefit. The more applications you have over time, the less release you have from the sediments. Now, there was a sediment demand, oxygen demand, and nutrient study conducted, 10 years or so ago. That's something that could be repeated over time to address whether it's becoming more effective, because a big source of the nutrients is internal recycling from the sediments themselves. So it is both cumulative over time, so you get added benefits, so it is helping. It also, as you'll see, we have a slide that talks about the costs of some different alternatives. Cost-wise, it is a lot cheaper than some of the other alternatives. I mean, you could dredge the lake. That's going to cost a lot. There are some other options that can be discussed. But what we're seeing, too, with the fish kills is fairly unique. So just remember, too, the history. There haven't been the same fish kills over the past 10 years of alum application or so. It's been really recent here we've seen this issue happen. There are some changes happening in the climate and the lake that we think could be exacerbating it. We're not sure why the golden algae has popped up. It's been a problem in a couple other lakes in Southern California as well, as mentioned, John mentioned for Lake Elsinore. So there's a couple other factors. The pH of the lake has been a little bit higher than before, which we think has probably added to the flock that you've seen. So we're reevaluating the amount of alum and how that gets applied in alternatives to alum. Right now, we're going through cost analysis and looking at alternatives. So we're definitely looking at that. This has all been part of a routine monitoring program. So that we're kind of moving into a different phase here, because all of a sudden we're chasing fish kills, which of course everybody's concerned about. So we want to address why the fish are dying. As the graph showed before, the green algae has dropped in concentrations over time. You see it, the watercolor right now is brown, right? It's not actually green. And part of that is probably due to the golden algae, which we're going to continue to monitor. So we're going to talk a little bit about some enhanced monitoring options and potential solutions, because we understand how important this is to you all. So it's been brown for 15 years. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you guys live here, know, the day to day. We're out here on a regular basis, but that's, yeah.
Next question, please.
Okay. So I did some research on alum. We're from the Bass Club, and so we're very in tune with the fish and the fishing in Canyon Lake. And there has been golden algae outbreaks in other lakes. So I took to the internet and did a very quick research on the link between alum application and the proliferation of golden algae. And anybody in this room that would like a copy of this, I've got about 20 copies with me after the meeting, let me know. But let me just say a couple things. It says, while alum effectively immobilizes phosphorus to improve water quality, it can also alter the ecosystem in ways that inadvertently favor golden algae. Golden algae is a toxic microtrophic flagellate that often blooms in nutrient-poor brackish waters. By changing nutrient availability, community composition, and water chemistry, alum treatments can create conditions that benefit golden algae. In particular, alum-induced phosphorus limitation and shifts in the NP ratios, the removal of competitor algae, which is what we're trying to get rid of, pH and ionic changes, and the food web effects have all been implicated in promoting golden algae proliferation. Another highlight, studies show that golden algae dominates when phosphorus is scarce, and that's what alum does, is it removes phosphorus. Moving right along, phosphorus deficiency specifically triggers golden algae proliferation and toxin production. Studies report that phosphorus-limited growth appears to result in toxin production. So what the golden algae does in a low phosphorus environment, that's when it secretes the toxin in order to kill the fish, because the decaying fish on the bottom of the lake then produce phosphorus back into the system. I could hit a couple more points, but it just goes on and on about, I'll get to the conclusion. By sequestering phosphorus and altering water chemistry, alum can create the very niche golden algae needs. Empirical studies and management reports concur lakes with tight phosphorus control, whether by alum or other means, often see golden algae emerge. So if anybody wants a copy of this, I have several of them.
No, that's great. I appreciate that information too. So this, yeah. Right. No, I mean, these are all good points and good homework on that too, because, you know, the alum is working as intended to pull out the nutrients to avoid the cyanobacteria, toxic blooms, and the other blooms that have, you know, that can occur. So it does scavenge the phosphorus, and as indicated, golden algae potentially could take advantage of that, out competing other algae species. And this is the first time we've seen this again. As far as we know, there hasn't been a golden algae bloom in Canyon Lake that's caused a fish kill. I think this is the first time, despite the number of alum treatments that have occurred. I guess the question point that we need to find out is if we hit a tipping point. Did something trigger it beyond that? You know, like I said, pH, conductivity of the water, temperature, combination of these factors, and alum scavenging the nutrients. These are things that we do need to look at. But this is a unique situation. This is the first time. I mean, this is fresh, you know, news off the press that we're actually seeing golden algae in Canyon Lake really for the first time at a concentration that we think would cause toxicity. So we're definitely in the learning phase, listening, taking as much, doing it. We've been in touch with professors at the different universities. Dave Karen is an expert in the algae, and some of the other folks on the team are helping us understand that. They're working with Lake Mission Viejo. You may have heard of that lake. They've had a chronic algae bloom with golden algae for a long time. It is concerning. It's not necessarily an easy thing to deal with. Mission Viejo, yeah. So it's,
how about if I just talk?
One question at a time. We'll let the person at the podium speak
Yeah.
so that everyone can hear it,
Yeah.
and then go on, please.
Thank you, gentlemen, for being here. My name is Mark Bowman. I'm from the Canyon Lake Bassmasters. Also, I understand your language because I'm a retired treatment operator and distribution operator and worked in sledge management and things of the nature. So my question to you is, this last alum application, there was not the same dosage that took place the application before that, which was not the same dosage that took place the application before that and before that. The reason why I know this is because I spoke to the staff, because I know them based on the industry, and they did 25 to 27 trucks, which took Monday through Friday up to Friday afternoon on the first 3 applications. I've lived here for 3 years.
Mhm.
The second application was the same. The fourth application I seen was less, more like 20 trucks. And this last application I seen was like 15 trucks completed by Wednesday. So my question to you is, was the dose the same as the applications when they did 25 truckloads? And if in fact that's true, I know in my experience, if you overdose, you've had experiences, and you gentlemen all know this to be so also. Overdosing can be damaging, and underdosing can also be damaging.
Mhm.
I believe I'm correct in that. I could be wrong.
Yeah.
This time there was less alum. Was it the same concentration? And did it just bring everything to a kind of a dissolved solid mode now and just bring it to life? Or did that even matter? Was the reason for underdosing because of funding, or was the reason for overdosing based on your sampling beforehand? That was the one question I had. You can answer it after. Also, as you can see, there's a huge number of people here that are very concerned about the fish kill.
Mhm.
Will this fish kill affect your water quality in the future as for using this for treatment? And as you can see, it affects a lot of our livelihoods. I stopped selling water for a living, and now I just bass fish, and that's all I want to do. And I don't want to go to Havasu to do it. And so this is a tight spot for a lot of us, but a healthy ecosystem is probably more important than the fact of whether I get to go fishing or not.
Mhm.
We'll figure that out.
Yeah.
But our biggest concern right now is the main lake and the East Lake both dying, and the North Lake maybe being the only thing that could save the main lake after the golden algae subsides.
Mhm.
So that's our big concern. That's why you see people here. And if any of those details about the last spraying is true and it made a difference, I would love to know. Thank you.
Yeah, sure thing. Good questions. Yeah. Maybe we can tag team this, but the alum applications are dosed based on water quality conditions that are measured ahead of time. So there is a difference in the dose depending on the conditions of the lake. And then I believe costs, was there a budget concerns with or issues with the last alum application?
No, we have, we've done CEQA documents, and so we have doses based upon what we could do in CEQA. So what we apply in the fall is 0.3 milligrams per liter in the main bay.
Yeah.
But in the spring, we have, it's a lower dosage that we apply.
Yeah.
So the spring is, we have a different concentration. I don't have them off the top of my head for the East Bay, for the main body, and then for the ski area. And so, the amount of trucks, the amount of alum is calculated based upon lake level and assumed water volume. And so based upon the water volume, that's how much alum we buy based upon meeting those concentrations. And how they're applied is done by the guys with the boats, with how fast they apply, how fast they travel, they have their rate of application based upon the speed and of the boats.
Yeah. Metered.
I just have a really simple question about safety. Would you let your young children or grandchildren have contact in the lake? Should they be water skiing? Should they be going to the beaches? It's just a simple question. I'm only concerned about that.
Yeah. No, a very good question, important question too. As far as we know, this isn't something that would cause human impacts. We're not measuring human pathogens or anything like that. So that's not part of the monitoring program that we're involved with. Yeah. So what's my answer? Well, personally, I wouldn't be afraid to jump in the water, put it that way, or have my own kids in the water from what I know. But being prudent, with the fish kill going on, I'd probably stay out of the water. So. Yeah,
Next question, please.
Yes, I'm kind of concerned about, do you have any idea the percentage of fish that have been killed off in this lake? I know up by my house in East Bay, I've got friends in the Bassmasters, and I'm one of them, that they've scanned my dock, they've scanned the shoreline, they don't see anything up there. So moving forward, when would we know when we would be able to restock this lake? And I say that based off of the Bassmasters' biggest thing that they give back to the community is in September, we have a kids fishing derby. And I'm quite concerned that, I have no idea what it's going to turn out like, but I would assume that it would be less. And that's basically my question. When can we stock? When would we get the go ahead to restock this lake? How long is this golden algae?
Yeah. So, well, to answer your first question, it's really hard to say what percentage of the fish have died off from this. I don't know what the total number of fish in this lake is, so that's kind of a hard number to pin down. And then on to your second question about when would it be appropriate to stock the lake again? Well, obviously, we're gonna have to wait till the golden algae subsides before you would want to add any fish to the lake, because that would be a losing battle. Now, I would suggest, and we're going to talk with Rick here in the next couple weeks about, or the next few days about, I think we should continue the monitoring on the golden algae to keep tabs on what its concentrations are looking like, because as I mentioned earlier, it tends to prefer cooler water, and as the water starts to warm up, I think we're going to start to see it subside. And so I think it would be smart for us to keep tabs on that on a regular basis to watch those concentrations as they start to drop. And so hopefully, by the end of the summer, when it comes to September, you'll be able to have the fishing derby and have the fish stocked for that. Okay.
Thank you for being here today to answer all these questions. I know everybody's very concerned.
Yeah.
Is there an established protocol when there's golden algae? It just seems like if this is a lake that's managed, that there should be an established protocol and people understand what to do. I'd also like to know, we'd like to see the measurements. I mean, it sounds like on this last alum, we'd like to know how much went into the lake. And we'd like to see current testing, like all these graphs you gave us from 2015 and 24. Give us something current. And also to the board, I think it's important that we make this a priority and we don't spend money on other projects right now. I mean, I have a special interest because I'm waterfront, and I'm really worried as a homeowner about what the value of all of our homes are going to be. And so this really needs to be a priority, and I really think we need more detailed information about what really occurred on this last alum treatment. And why is it taking so long to get the fish results?
So the fish tissue results, that's the only ones that are still pending. Those analyses typically take longer than others. So water quality, water samples are pretty quick turnaround time. When you're talking about fish tissue or taxonomy, where you're looking at identification of zooplankton or other animals, those take a longer time frame. So that's why we don't have those results back yet.
Right.
We knew this ahead of time.
It just feels like everybody's caught off guard and it's taking longer than it should be. That's how it feels.
Yeah, I mean, these types of results take longer. This is not unexpected that we don't have these results back yet. For the tissue. So which results are you talking about now? So the gill tissue should be back really soon. I mean, it's been I'd say a month and a half now since we sent in those samples, so we should get those results back fairly soon.
I would just, there's not a lot of laboratories that do the fish tissue, and so they get backed up. And so you're in a queue waiting for your opportunity for your samples are in a queue.
Yeah, as far as knowing I think one of the other questions was about knowing the amount of alum that was added for each application and knowing the results on so we do a pre-alum application.
Quiet, please.
We do a pre-alum application monitoring event where we go out about a week before and we measure water quality parameters. And then we have a post-alum application event that typically happens on a regular schedule about a month after the alum application happens. And so those results we can, probably turn around and get you guys those results fairly soon after we get them. Now, as Chris mentioned earlier, we're looking at some different alternatives in the way that we monitor or pre and post alum application. And so we're reevaluating how that does and try to get those results sooner and closer to when the actual alum post-alum application monitoring happens after the event instead of, about 3 weeks to 4 weeks after the alum application. And so we're reevaluating right that now to get some better data. And we'd be certainly willing to share that with you guys. Yes.
Hey, my question is it coincidental that all this happened right after they treated the water? Because I noticed a couple days after you treated the water color changed something fierce. And then we got like a week and a half, 2 weeks later, we start seeing all these fish die off. It just seems to me like something you put in the water right there kind of messed everything up. I don't think we can get all the politics out of this and start getting some straight answers.
Yeah.
I think we'd be a lot happier.
Yeah.
And be honest about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, as I mentioned, I don't think that the toxicity that we're seeing from the fish dying off are not a direct result of aluminum toxicity. I can say that for, pretty sure. Now,
Please.
getting to the indirect effects, that's a completely separate question. That was brought up earlier. I mean, it's possible that by stripping phosphorus from the water column, that this did promote the golden algae bloom unintentionally. Now, that's a possibility. I'm not saying that's a fact, but it's a possibility. Okay. Now, that's different than saying aluminum caused toxicity to the fish. Different question.
Next question, please.
Yeah.
Thank you. My question is two-part. The first is the golden algae bloom a Canyon Lake only problem, or is there a threat to Lake Elsinore? And should they be part of this discussion as well, being having a downstream impact?
Yeah.
And the other part of my question is, does the program that the nano bubbler program that they've been running, it looks pretty interesting. Does that have application here, and could that be of benefit to Canyon Lake?
So to answer your first question, right now Canyon Lake Dam is not overflowing. So I don't believe that there's any downstream impacts right now to Lake Elsinore from the golden algae bloom here. The second question, the way that the nanobubbles down in Canyon or in Lake Elsinore right now do seem to be having a positive effect on the lake down there. So essentially what those are they're very, very tiny bubbles that are added to the water column and oxygenate the water. No, they're so small that they're actually neutrally buoyant. They don't float. And so they can kind of move throughout the water column. And so we are seeing some benefit down there. I'm actually going to be out on Lake Elsinore in about 2 weeks doing a lake-wide dissolved oxygen study to look at the effects of these barges. And so I would say yes. I mean, there is part of this alternative analysis that we're thinking about are different ways to help oxygenate the lake. And by oxygenating the lake, you're not only just helping to increase dissolved oxygen levels for the fish and other organisms that live there, but you're also helping to bring that oxygen level up at the bottom. Because as I mentioned, when you get low dissolved oxygen at the bottom, that's when you get that high nutrient flux out of there. If you can keep that oxygenated layer down at the bottom, you're going to see less nutrients coming out of the sediment. So something like nanobubbles or some other sort of technology similar to that to increase the oxygen level in Canyon Lake would be beneficial.
And no chemicals?
Without chemicals. Down at Lake Elsinore? Well, the reason, well,
we need to hold on. Again, we have a lot of people that are lined up to speak, and so I want to honor those people by allowing them to go in order. So let's address the next speaker. If you'd like to get in line, we'd be happy to have you join us. We will take all questions.
Hey, Rick, over here. Could you speak to how Lejua is funded and how the alum treatments are funded? Because there seems to be a misconception that the property owners are paying for the alum treatment, and that is not the case.
Okay, yes, the alum applications are funded by the Lake Elsinore Canyon Lake TMDL Task Force. That includes Riverside County. It does include the city of Canyon Lake and I guess about 18 or we have about 20 stakeholder members paying into the program. And our alum applications per year are about $700,000 a year for applying alum, and those are paid for by the task force members and the stakeholder. That includes City of San Jacinto, City of Paris, City of Moreno Valley, Hemet, Menifee. A number of cities pay into that. We are not currently partnered with the POA as part of the task force, but we are partnered with the City of Canyon Lake, and so those alum applications are paid by the stakeholders in that task force.
I can guarantee this does not show up in the Canyon Lake budget. I've been on the finance committee for 4 years, built budgets for 4 years, and I've never seen this line item come up in the POA budget.
The stakeholders pay into it, correct me if I'm wrong, it's more or less a sin tax, right? It's those neighboring communities are taxed or fined or assessed, let me finish, please, or assessed fees as a result of what is anticipated their contribution to the nutrient load coming into Canyon Lake.
Well, we're not a governing body to tax. What we have is we have the cities in the water districts, the cities, agriculture, and March Air Force Base. Those are all stakeholders. We have a task force. We have a task force agreement, and the way that they are invoiced for the alum is based upon their anticipated need for nutrient reduction. And so basically, we'll just say the county probably pays about 50% of the total alum bill. The city of Canyon Lake might pay 3 or 4% of the alum bill. It's based upon the amount of nutrient load contribution. So
Kind of but essentially it's their invoice. So March Air Force Base, because of the nutrient load that they send out, their invoice is based on that, correct?
part of it. I mean, the task force itself has a budget over $1 million a year. So there's a lot of other things that they're paying into, and the alum is just one portion, one component of that larger budget. And so we have budgets approved every year by the cities or city staff.
Right, but I guess the point I'm trying to drive to is they're paying into that.
Yes.
Because they are responsible for the nutrient flow, or they contribute to the nutrient flow.
Yes.
Thank you.
My question's three parts. Primarily fishing. You'd said that you sent out samples for fish. Which fish species did you send out? Because I fish for crappie a lot in the lake. I've noticed a lot of the dead fish I've seen bass, I've seen bluegill, I've seen a lot of shad. Did you send out any crappie? What species did you send out for the testing for the gill studies?
So when I was out there to collect the fish, I only saw bass. It was
I've seen crappie and shad.
So I'm just telling you, when I was out there to collect the fish, the only fish available to me, the only fish I saw in the lake on that day I was there were bass. And I went up and down the whole eastern arm many times. So this was back on April 23rd. This was April 23rd.
That we're going to get data back for really going to only be bass.
It's for largemouth bass. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, but that's something that we may need to think about addressing, getting other species and so forth too. So that's something we've discussed that too, the validity of that too, because they were fish that had already died and floated to the surface, right? They weren't fresh fish caught right out of the lake.
Right.
You know, this is going to be one of those considerations we're going to have for future monitoring programs, because the validity of the tissue samples from dead fish that floated up, you know, right now, it is only one species, you know, it's something.
The second part of my question is Lake Mission Viejo. I did some internet studies on it. Has golden algae in it, and it's been dead since probably 2016. There's no fish in there.
Yeah.
Have we used that as a case study for what they did, so that we don't do what they did, and make sure that we've taken that lesson to figure out?
Right. It's lessons learned. Yeah, we're trying to figure out why fish can't come back in Mission Viejo and other lakes as well. I mean, this is concerning, right? So we're hoping with this algae bloom goes away, but we're going to have a good monitoring program in place to see what's going on and what the alternatives are to avoid it.
Okay.
Right.
Third part question is, I've heard, again, through internet studies that sometimes you can put different aquatic species in the water to help work on the golden algae, like hyacinth, some of the emergent grasses. Is there any opportunity to start introducing some of that naturally into our lake to help to subside some of this golden algae? Is that something we can do immediately if that's effective?
No, good question. Yeah.
Yeah, that's certainly an alternative. We would have to go through a process to make sure we're not going to have any unintended consequences as a result of that. I mean, I know biological controls are a method that have been used in a lot of cases, and in some cases they work, in other cases they don't. Sometimes you get unintended consequences as a result of those. So that's a process we have to kind of, we can't just like, let's go buy some stuff and throw it in there tomorrow, right? So there's a process to think through these things in a way that's, we're not going to cause more issues than we currently have.
It also requires us to work with Elsinore Valley Water, a municipal water district as well. We're working with Lejeune, working with the city of Canyon Lake. We're working with Elsinore Valley Municipal Water District. And it takes all those authorities to work together. And so there was a question raised earlier about what about Lake Elsinore? Well, the EVMWD also represents Lake Elsinore. And so all of them, and you'll hear from Director Burke at some point yet this evening on this as well.
How you guys doing? Couple questions. One question, we have water dues. Is that going to be something that you're going to look upon? Because at this point, like the gentleman said, he probably wouldn't jump in our water right now. With people that have lakefront properties or have already paid our water dues for our boats, are we getting a discount back? Are we people that, people that have, I mean, this is a fair question. The other thing is people that don't have trailers to get their boats off the water that are refusing to pay for this to have their boat on the water that we have that stinks. What's going to happen there? That's one question. The other statement would be, our question to you, sir, is you had said that you are almost positive that it's not because this bloom or whatever that the fish aren't affected. How can you say that without having your results back from the fish you sent out? So that's another, these are all topics. And the other thing is, can we have somebody here, considering this is, like you said, Bill, this is our main asset, right? So can we have somebody here 24/7 to figure this out, considering this is our main asset to our lakes? All of our equity in the houses in this community are going down because of this. I don't even want to invite friends or family over here because it's embarrassing when you go down the causeway and you smell the smell you have from the stench from this fish just rotting everywhere. So these are all problems that I hope you guys all take into consideration and very seriously for every homeowner out here.
We certainly do. It's we live this as we're all residents and volunteers as well. We do live this every day. It is our top concern and is addressed. In terms of your question about rebate or so forth on dues, we still have a contract with the water district, right? And we still have that. You still are allowed to put your boat in even though you choose not to. In that case, sorry, but it's.
But wait, so every year we have this, right? We have this every year. You said we've already saved somebody that's like myself. I pay my dues right away, thinking that I'm going to be able to get on this water right away. I've paid my dues, so I'm expecting to have clean water for my kids to jump in. I wouldn't jump in that, nor am I going to let my children jump in it. You want to answer that question?
Which question are you referring to? Sorry.
How can you tell me this is not affecting the fish when you haven't had your results back from the fish that you sent out?
So because I know based on literature that literature values that we know that there's a certain level of golden algae in the water. If there's this level of golden algae in the water, it's going to cause fish toxicity. We have above that level currently in Canyon Lake.
I think your question was directly related to the alum application
No, I think his,
specifically.
his question was more about, we don't have the fish tissue results back yet, so
Oh.
how can we say it's not that?
I think if
So-
the question is the too much alum that's created everything that we've had here. I think once we get more than one fish, like a largemouth bass, plus all the other fish that have been here for over 4 weeks, sent out immediately and tested so that we as a community can feel safe again to jump in our lakes after we know it is safe.
Yeah. Yeah, no, some good points. I think, we're in that learning process to get that information and consider other species and,
Howdy. So you had mentioned that Lake Elsinore had the golden algae bloom before a few years ago.
Mhm.
Were there any strategies or things that were implemented to combat the golden algae that were successful on that lake? I haven't heard anything saying or did it just self-correct?
So that one's self-corrected. That die-off started, if I remember right after Christmas 2018. And then the golden algae disappeared by the end of January. So that was about a 4-week bloom, and it went away on its own. And we haven't seen it. That was 6 years ago, and we haven't seen it since.
So I would point out that bloom happened after the Holy Fire and a bunch of flooding that occurred and a pretty drastic change in the water quality in the lake. Brought in a lot of fresh water. It also got rid of some of the cyanobacteria. So the golden algae apparently had an opportunity to bloom, but it warmed up quickly, so it did go away quickly. So it hasn't been able to compete with the green algae that's out there, the cyanobacteria. So it kind of did self-correct, but it was just a spike. Having said that, there's a concern. You don't want to get more golden algae back in there and ever give it a chance, right? So same here in Canyon Lake.
Okay, we know the alum treatment happened. We know the fish die-off has happened. We know the lake is brown now. This golden algae bloom has happened. What are we going to do about it? And the lake it's been pretty dirty for a long time. Has there been any kind of discussion about like aqua thrusters or filters or what is the plan moving forward with fixing this problem?
Yeah, so that's part of the alternative analysis that we're going through right now, is to figure out what are some ways that we can, moving forward, help to ensure that we have better water quality on a more consistent basis. And so part of that is looking at
Excuse me. Let's let him answer the question, and then if you have a question, please line up.
Yeah, so we're looking at terms like whether it's aeration, whether it's oxygenation, whether it's other types of phosphorus sequestration or algicide or something that's going to be a more long-term solution for this, or even better, upstream BMPs to help sequester nutrients before they get to the lake. Ultimately, as I mentioned earlier, the root cause of all of these issues are nutrients in the water. No nutrients in the water, you don't have algae in the water, or you don't have as much algae in the water. So that's ultimately what we need to get at is reducing nutrients.
Please.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if we want to hit that slide on, I know there's lots more questions, but that kind of talks a little bit about some of the alternatives, no? Or do you want to keep asking?
We got a bunch of people lined up here.
Okay.
Why don't we
go through
why
those
don't we just,
questions.
before we get to that, why don't you go ahead and flip that off before we.
Okay.
So I'll make this kind of quick.
Yeah.
It doesn't do any good to get angry and mad.
Yeah.
I'm here for solutions.
Agree.
And as I like to say, hope is not a very good strategy. Golden algae isn't new. So what are other lakes doing that have it? What are our options and what are the costs and let us make a decision to move forward.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I just don't feel like waiting and hoping like Lake Elsinore that it goes away when in the meantime we could be destroying our lake with consequences that won't be able to be resolved in the future. Because without fish, this community is not good.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's a good question. Again, this is relatively new, right? This is something that's unique that we're seeing and haven't seen this bloom type, issue. There have been dissolved oxygen issues that have taken some fish out, but this is unique. So we're right in there with you on the learning. We want to fish and see fish here. We're both fishermen. I know others are avid fishermen as well. So we're here to support and team with you guys, and we're open to, working with you guys on these solutions. But it
Chris-
takes some time to go through an alternatives analysis. So
If I can ask a question, let me rephrase the question that I've heard from a couple of people now. Are there any quick treatments that we can use to resolve the golden algae issue? Any quick treatments available?
So probably the quickest treatment would be to get out there with a copper algicide and start applying a copper type treatment to knock down the algae as quick as possible. There are unintended consequences that can happen with that too. It's not a long-term fix, but there has to be a permit application process. We got to get a permit and okay from the state of California. It's a pesticide application permit essentially. So there is some time that takes to get that, and there's cost. And it's a big, pretty big water body to treat. So we'd have to look at what that cost is.
Okay, so is it possible for us to currently use copper sulfate as an algicide treatment in Canyon Lake, a drinking water reservoir?
That's another question too, because there's a drinking water reservoir.
There are other alternatives other than copper. There's, for example, there's a peroxide algicide which could be used, which is doesn't involve heavy metals. And
is it possible to do that in Canyon Lake, which is a drinking water reservoir?
Yeah, for peroxide, yes. I'm not sure about the copper treatment. I'd have to check on that. But peroxide is one. However, as Chris mentioned, there are consequences to that in the sense that the way that algicides work is they lyse the cells of the algae, therefore killing the algae. Unfortunately, when you do that, it releases toxins into the water. So you could have a very short-term spike, even higher than we have now, of the toxin when these cells are broken, when they're lysed because of pesticide. So there's that. Yes, it will get rid of the algae, but you could have a short-term spike in toxins.
Back to the copper sulfite.
Yes.
It's questionable whether we can even do that with a drinking water reservoir. That's the first thing.
Correct.
So just be clear, so when we're starting solutions and then people will get frustrated, so we shouldn't throw out things that aren't even feasible. But the second part of that is, can you speak to the unintended consequences of copper sulfite? Because I've heard that in places that have used that, it's actually come back on worse blooms in subsequent years.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, sometimes it's used as a short-term, fix for an algae bloom, but there are potential unintended long-term consequences as well. So these things do have to really take some thought. Unfortunately, it takes time to come up with a good solution. Every water body is extremely unique, how they operate. You saw some of the data here, but this is a complex system. If there was an easy fix, believe me, a lot of lakes wouldn't have golden algae or other algae blooms.
I'm going to go back to the specific likely unintended consequences of using the copper sulfite, if it was even possible, which it is likely not.
Right. Yeah. Well, unintended consequences are what John just mentioned, that it's going to lyse the cells. So you are going to potentially have an increase in toxins because the cells are broken. And so that's a possible short-term effect that can happen. And copper itself is toxic to wildlife, to zooplankton and so forth. And if you kill the zooplankton, you kill the animals that are eating the algae. So it's really got to be done carefully so you're not upsetting the whole biological community by these applications.
Yeah, and algicides are just short-term fixes. It gets rid of it now, but it's going to come back.
Thank you, guys. Next question, please.
Dennis Pitts. I've been here for 42 years and have been fortunate enough to live on the lake. Couple of observations. Observation number one is on the television in recent months, golden algae has been in many places, including Canyon Lake and in the ocean. It was deemed that that was the killer of the whale that wound up in the harbor and also making sea lions and seals sick. Do you guys interface with those people, or since it's two different types of water, and do they bring any experience base to this problem?
Yeah, we actually have been doing quite a bit of marine algae monitoring with Scripps Institution of Oceanography. So we are collaborating and have been over the years. We actually do the routine monitoring for the university for their discharges. So algae blooms and toxic algae blooms has been something that we've been involved with folks there. I'm not sure if the golden algae, I'd have to look at that reference, was really a marine species that was causing the die-off with the sea lions and the dolphins, because I know it was a domoic acid species, which is a different
On the
species.
television, coincidentally, they mentioned golden algae.
Yeah, so they might have had a species mix up on this, on the golden algae versus a different species.
A second, not
But-
question, but observation. Living on the lake for as long as I have, number one, since we've started alum, and it could be strictly, I don't know, unintentional, but we have far less ducks on the lake than we have had when I was here before. This year, I observed that the geese that had their babies before the alum was put down, and the babies were of, I'd call a teenage type of goose, survived. The geese that had their babies after the alum, I haven't seen one set that has any of the babies surviving. As an example, if you want to check, there are 4 or 5 sets of mating pairs on the causeway. One of those was one that had babies before the alum. Their babies are now late teenagers and probably ready to migrate out of here. The other 4 or 5 sets had babies. They were there for a couple days and are not in existence. Third observation. By this time of year, we normally have coots returning to the lake. I've seen none. Do they know more than we do? Are they telling us something about the water may not be safe? That's all I have to say.
Yeah. No, thank you for those observations. This is the type of information that's helpful for us to put all the pictures together too. So we may want to connect and get your contact information afterwards too, because the more information that we get from you all from these observations, the helpful. I don't know personally of literature or information on the relationship between bird die-offs or, problems in alum specifically, but it's something that we're taking notes on. Yeah.
Just a quick question. In your past experience and the research you've done, what's the worst case scenario and what's the best case when people can get back in the water? Give us some time frames, because we don't have any time frames. We're just like wait and see. That doesn't give us anything. I'm under contract right now to buy a house on the water. And right now I'm like saying, I don't think I'm going to do it because you're not giving me anything that says I'm going to have a fishery, Yeah. And that's a lot of money to be buying a house out here right now. They're at the top of the market. So this is kind of scary for somebody like me. I have 3 days to decide whether I'm going to pull the string or not. And this is not making me have any confidence. So worst case scenario is it's going to be like Mission Viejo. Okay. Best case scenario, 2 weeks is going to be better. A month. Yeah. When can people start getting back in the water and feel safe with their kids?
Right. No, I mean, very challenging questions to answer completely. So, I mean, a worst case scenario, yeah, is a Mission Viejo situation. I hope it's not, right? But we're here to do everything we can to find solutions and understand what's happening. Best case scenario, this fish die-off is done, and, here this week, right? And people can feel comfortable getting out there back in the water.
So are you going to test the water to let people know that, hey, the golden algae bloom is gone and it's safe? And how are we going to do that?
We're sitting down to go through some monitoring recommendations and suggestions to get that information quicker. And it takes some money, so we got to work through contractual questions. But getting more samples to keep a close track on this algae bloom, I think is important. So we want to get those sent off, get looked at right away, get the results back to you guys as soon as we can, so we can give you a handle on at least that particular species.
One other question. In places that have had this happen before, Have you had to see a huge increase in the amount of money the HOA has to increase their cost to handle, to manage this? Because I'm concerned, you know, the HOA fees might have to go up because now we're doing this to manage this. So
Yeah,
is this,
yeah.
this is the costly thing is what you're saying?
Yeah.
Right, we're gonna have to come up with some solutions for the lake, some longer, not just short-term solutions, but also, okay, how do we look at this in a preventative way? And so we don't see something like this again. Those are some potential, you know, maybe it's an aeration system, maybe it's some other sort of treatment system that gets put into the lake to help prevent this in the future. I can't say, I can't speak to whether or not, you know, HOA fees are gonna go up. That's not my area.
Well,
I'm just talking about
your costs are gonna
yeah,
go up because
so-
you're having to do more monitoring, stuff like that, correct?
Well, you're right. There's costs associated with having more eyes on the water, more sampling, more monitoring to document what's happening so that we can make sure the right solutions are implemented. For sure.
Thank you. Appreciate you.
So in response to your question too, specifically, we typically, we have a protocol for doing more sampling for the holidays. And one of the things that's under discussion is more frequent sampling. I will say the costs of the sampling are not a significant driver. So we're looking at it as one measure to stay more on top of the situation over a longer term.
You guys are a wealth of information. I really appreciate your time tonight.
Oh, thanks.
A lot of hostility tonight, obviously. I'm personally, I moved here in 2001, property owner since, and I moved here for the lake, Canyon Lake. Darcy Burke's in the audience. We joke about that. It's Canyon Lake. If anything, I hope it comes to our forefront that, you know, this is a big deal, taking care of our lake. My understanding is Lake Mission Viejo. John, you made the comment earlier that there's no magic bullet, and that's unfortunately, I think you're right on that.
Yeah.
And it's not an easy one. Lake Mission Viejo, I think they have a water treatment facility for this. Maybe you could comment when I walk away. And then the other thing is it possibly related to the fact that we haven't been moving water since 2019, I want to say, since the water treatment plant went off? That the gentleman three before me asked the other question I wanted, but that's the only question I really haven't heard yet. So maybe the water treatment is a treatment facility. And one other thing I want to comment, we're the consumer here. So me not paying the POA for something, they've got to get the money somewhere else. They've got a budget. So if I tell the POA I'm not paying for my boat, that's just crazy. They're going to get the money somewhere else. We own it. It's our problem. We are the renter of the lake. If there's an issue, I would think the city and the water district should be more concerned. We should be telling them, hey, what are we doing? Please give us some solutions. I really appreciate your time again.
Yeah. Great. Yeah.
Yeah, to get to your question about the water movement. So one of the ways that a lot of lakes have tried to be preventative as far as algae blooms go is to keep the lake in a destratified condition, to where you do have oxygen from top to bottom, high oxygen from top to bottom. When the lake stagnates, when there's not a lot of water movement, the lake can, you know, start to develop lower oxygen levels, which then, as I mentioned earlier, and I keep mentioning, you get nutrient flux out of the sediments because of that. And so again, this all comes back to a nutrient issue. And so mixing the lake, some sort of a water movement system could be a potential solution down the road to help this issue. And so that's something, again, that we have, you know, on the list of one of our alternatives there. But I think you're right in that sense.
One other question, I'll let somebody else talk, since you kind of got me thinking that way. I talked to Darcy about this in the past.
Okay.
Those people in the East Bay, eventually when the water level does go down, when they start bringing offline, that sediment comes through every year, is going to cause a problem with a lot of those homes. And my understanding is that we have to take if we dredge, it has to be incinerated out of state. We can't afford that. That's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So is another solution possibly to help with this problem is to buy water and flush out the lake? Is that an option?
Water retention is definitely, the retention time can have influence, right? It's becoming more stagnant if it sits there. So that is an option. I guess the cost of it would all have to be figured out, and making sure that the water source is a good, you know, good for the lake, obviously, too. Working with EVMWD, you know, on their operations is going to be important through that kind of a process, obviously, as well. And so, yeah, these are things to consider.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, my question is really for POA and operations. What do you guys do with the fish and the bags of fish that are dead and anybody?
Yeah, good question. So first of all, we have just a few facts for you. We have 15 miles of shoreline, right? There are 10 people a day out collecting fish and doing that. We're putting them in. We are having those bins emptied every other day. They store them near the operations yard, which we have it. There's a little bit of a complication with that because you can't take the fish and put them in the normal trash because most of our trash collected by CR&R is taken to a transfer station, which is like putting them on a cement floor. So they actually have to be picked up and taken to the dump. And so we've arranged for that, and it's going about every other day that's being done.
Okay, yeah, because my daughter, she rides at the equestrian center, and I know you've been there, and it is horrible for the kids and the animals, the horses to be out there and smelling it and riding it. It's just unbearable sometimes. And I just want to make sure that it's addressed and, you know, taken care of, and because it is.
No, we
rampant.
understand. We empathize with it, and we're committed to doing. Like I said, every other day we're having those bins
Did this just start?
taken out in the last week.
Okay, so you guys are starting to do it more frequently?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
The gentleman earlier had hint on what I was come up to talk about. We lease this water. We don't own this water. The water department owns this water. And I remember, I've been here for 25 years as well. When we get low, they buy water. It's in our lease, right? They have to keep the water level to a certain level. And because we haven't been using, they haven't been using the treatment plant, they haven't been using this water for the water department for years now. So the only water that goes through here flows over the top of the dam, unless you're opening up the gate to test the gates, which stinks, but it gets the water from the lower section of the, and the water that we have that's good oxygenated is on the top. Is that not correct?
Yeah, right.
So we have no water coming. This becomes a big stagnant pond like Lake Elsinore. So what's the chance that we talk to the water department and we open up the gates, flush out some of this crap that's on the bottom, and get some new water? Is that an option? Wouldn't that
Yeah,
help
yeah.
having some fresh water in here instead of this water that's
It's
been here? How long's the water treatment plant been down? 6, 9 years? A long time. A long time. They don't know.
4 more years.
They don't know yet. They're
2029.
The water
2029.
department's putting out bids, and they haven't got any bids back. So
Yeah.
would that not help our condition in this lake if we opened up the gates, flushed out some of the stuff on the bottom, and the water department who owns the water brought in some new water?
Yeah, it's certainly an option. And like I think what Chris mentioned earlier, residence time is a big factor when it comes to
So that would
algae
be a
bloom.
quick and easy fix. Unfortunately, it'll cost the water department a little bit of cash. It's not going to cost us anything. It's the water department's water.
Okay, hear your opinion. This is a subject that we are in partnership with the water district in the city and working this issue, and Director Burke is here, and I'm sure she'll be able to speak to that later. The gates are only opened and maintained, used twice a year or once a year for maintenance. And that's the reason why. And they're not, it's not used, the dam is not used that way currently. Understand the sentiment, understand the idea. It's come up before. We'll let Director Burke address it for us.
I understand you only open those to check them, because if we needed to get water out of here faster, you would open for a catastrophe, whatever. They're operational and can be used if that was an option and we needed to get fresh water in here to fix this problem. You could open those gates to allow fresh water to come in from the Colorado River. And that would help, and it would be expedited, correct?
It certainly would help. Yep.
Well, we all want to fix here.
Sure.
We all want to fix here.
Thank you for your opinion. Appreciate the comment. It's an item we can address. We can't address it right this moment.
The other question was mentioned earlier.
Please.
We do anything to damage the water because it's drinking water, but it's not. This is not drinking water. So if we could treat it, even though it's not drinking water, you don't worry about treatment because it's drinking water, but it's not and hasn't been. So maybe you want to think in a different, out of the box to treat this water. So I can put my grandkids in it.
Yeah.
Because I won't right now.
Yeah, we're going to look into those options that would include the permitting for that too. And definitely good points. Great points. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen, for your time, and to the board. I understand this is a really complex issue and don't necessarily have a plan of action moving forward. I did want to request to the board, though, if it is possible, I'm very ignorant to operations and Marine Patrol and everything that is going on. I'm sure they are doing everything they can, but if we could request for any additional effort to be put into it, just my own anecdotal experience, I can't open my windows. The stench is terrible. I've been trying to collect fish out in my channel and bagging them up. I've been calling Marine Patrol and operations for many days. It's been 4 days. The bags of fish are still laying there. Animals or birds have ripped them open now. So there's fish and flies and gnats all over my dock, and it's pretty gross. So obviously that's my own anecdotal experience, and it's making me feel like the situation is really not being addressed. I understand this is anecdotal and the efforts are probably being done, but just my own experience I wanted to share with you guys. I've been waiting 4 days. I'm trying to help, and it's like, how can I just get these bags picked up and continue to do so? It's making me not want to continue trying to help if the bags of fish are just going to lay there.
Understand that. One thing, first of all, appreciate you bringing that to our attention and doing the bags. When you collect the bags and then have the fish, put them at your driveway.
Okay.
On the,
yeah.
I'm on the driveway and operation and contact operations, they'll come by and do it. The better thing to do, though, I'm just telling you what we ask people to do, okay? And whether you like it or not, I'm just trying to say what we ask people to do.
For sure.
The other thing,
wrong information. I thought I saw a post that was saying bag them up, put them on your dock.
Yeah, there was some confusion at first. We said Marine Patrol operations is the one in charge of collecting it.
Both are true, right, Steve? Okay, yeah. Operations will pick it up on your dock or your driveway. You just have to let us know.
Yeah, I'll do whatever is helpful, but okay. All right. Thank you for your time.
My question is not for the scientists. Thank you for being here, but my question is more for like the POA folks. In the future, as residents with HO, with dues and everything, do we have any say-so on the continued use of this alum? Or is this just something we have no rights as citizens to control? Do we have any say-so whatsoever if you have the continued treatment of this alum? Because I really feel that I've been here since 2013, and I definitely think that it's affecting the fishery.
Honestly, not really. The Property Owners Association doesn't have we are not a public agency, and the stakeholders that belong to LEJWA and the TMDL task force, as Rick mentioned, are all cities in the watershed and March Air Force Base, everyone that contributes to the nutrient load that comes here, and that they are all public agencies. LEJWA is all those people have a seat at the table, and as a private company, we don't have a seat at that table.
Yeah, but we live here, and we don't have any say-so over that?
We lease the surface rights, and the water quality issues are handled by the public agencies and LEJWA and the water district.
And the city of Canyon Lake
And
has
the
a seat at that
city of
table.
Canyon Lake is a stakeholder, and they have a seat at the table at LEJWA and at TMDL task force. But as a private property owners association, we don't. And they're much more knowledgeable than we are about water quality.
Okay, thank you.
Hello. My question is, and I hope nobody already asked this because I've listened and I haven't. Would it be possible or would it help if the people that had boats drove around, made it a point to drive the boats more often to get some oxygen in the water or anything like that that you can suggest to us? Would that help
It might,
to move the water?
it might help a little. Yeah, there would have to be a lot of driving.
Well, we have a lot of
yeah,
boats.
so I mean, it
You'd be surprised how much
yeah,
you
I
can
mean,
move that water.
prop wash from a boat can circulate the water slightly, but it's in some of the shallow areas of the lake potentially. Once you get into the western half of the eastern arm and then the main body of the lake, I don't know that would be all much of a solution, I guess, because it wouldn't circulate enough to really de-stratify the lake and mix the water column as would be needed.
It gets pretty choppy out there. That's why I was thinking,
Yeah.
why don't we get out on our
I mean-
boats and move that water around and get some oxygen in it? Because I do believe they used to have fountains or something.
Mhm.
Is that right, Bill?
Yeah.
Where they used to have circulation like
They're
down-
called water bees.
Yeah.
We had some water.
Yeah, and they took them out because, and I don't know if this is true, but I heard that it was too much maintenance or something.
End
that
of life.
help
They just had
too?
an end of life.
Oh, okay. I'm just concerned because back 38 years ago, I lived in Lake Elsinore
Okay.
for 2 years, and that's all it took, and I got out of there. And then we moved, to Orange County, and we were there for 24 years, and then we moved here, and we were camping at Launch Point for Easter, and that water has not gotten better. And this is 38 years. I don't want that to happen to Canyon Lake.
Mm-hmm.
Please don't let that happen to Canyon Lake. Okay?
Yes.
Good deal. Yeah.
The question of going out on boats,
Mm.
okay.
It can't hurt. I mean,
But no, hold on, because I've been in meetings and we've been there. We've heard contradictory information about that. So I want to be really careful. Again, this is where misinformation. So there was a meeting and said, yeah, everybody line up their boats and get some out of going and blah, blah, blah. And then it was like, oh, wait a second. Actually, golden algae is particularly susceptible to agitation. It can actually worsen it. So we need to be very clear on the information. If saying like, can it hurt? Does it help a little? Does it not help? But I've been in 3 different meetings and I've heard 3 different feedbacks about it.
interesting. Yeah. Yeah, I haven't heard of that one myself, but that's, something that we should look into, unintended consequences.
We're going. I gotta hit the button. First of all, thank y'all. Hostile situation. You guys have kept your composure, so appreciate that. I just want to talk on the fishing. I don't have kids. I got a couple dogs or whatever, but maybe this is a golden algae deal killing these fish. But the heartbeat of this lake, to be honest with you, probably lies with the fishermen. We're out there when it's 30 degrees. We're out there when it's 110 degrees. We're out there constantly. And I have personally seen the alum gives these fish sores and a slime and erratic behavior. A largemouth bass in the middle of summer just doesn't go and park his nose on a bank of riprap and just stare at it. Like that's totally, they're the smartest fish out there. So I specifically think the alum affects these fish. Is it responsible for this kill? I have no idea. That could be the golden algae. But I have seen, we got a lot of bass fishing guys here that it affects them. It's like 3-4 days after you stock the alum, it's hard to catch anything. So, and just for my data, we had a tournament, I think May 16th or 17th, took 25 pounds to win. Great weight. 3 days later, I went out fishing. It was my day off, Tuesday or Wednesday. I went out fishing for 8 hours on May 19th or 20th, and I could not get a bite. So that's kind of just when it transpired. Another concerning thing is there was a huge fish kill in the East Bay about 4 or 5 weeks before the main lake. So why wasn't this addressed? Why wasn't like people should have been kicking in like we can't let this happen in the main lake? Another issue, I don't know if you guys know, I don't know if you know, or probably 90% of the people in there was 2 huge oil spills from the water district. Did that affect the fish? Did that have anything to do You know, I don't have kids, but I won't even let my dogs jump in the water. There was a constant film on the whole lake. And a couple of guys that, Mark that was up here earlier called the water district and he's like, oh yeah, it should be fine. We had a huge spill, but it's, plant-based or vegetable-based or something. And I mean, these poor ducks, all these life forms, it's just, I feel like the eyes aren't on this lake. It's just probably a constant money flow and people just don't seem concerned with the fish or the wildlife, to be honest with you.
Those are good observations. That's great information to keep and to, get to us. We should, we'll leave you contact information.
That's been going
But
on. Sorry about that. The fish sores and the slime on the fish, that's been past 6-7 years. And
But-
another issue is if the alum, we want the lake to be pretty, at least a lot of the water skiers, whoever, they want it to be pretty and they want it to be clear. A clear lake is not necessarily a healthy lake, as you guys will know. The clarity means nothing for water quality. And the past few years that you've done the alum, it hasn't improved the water quality. It's made it this brown and yellow color. So just some information for you.
Yeah, no, appreciate that. Yeah.
I'd like to clarify a comment on the huge oil spill. The only oil spill we're aware of is when they exercised some of the equipment at the dam. They replaced some of the equipment there, and there was a small bit of vegetable oil that came out of that. It was water quality. It was a food grade quality stuff, and it wasn't a huge spill as you might envision. I'm just saying. I'm just telling you what the information that was provided by the water district. Thank you.
Do you have a date for that? I mean, or time frame, I guess? Time frame on the oil? All right, okay.
Hi, guys. I just want to thank you for being here.
Sure.
Thank you for the POA for inviting you here so that it helps to understand what's going on with the water. We've been talking about the alum treatments. The one thing that nobody's really brought up is that you had the alum treatment, and then about 2 weeks later, we had a huge rain event, thunder, lightning, and it was just like a huge, basically like a toilet flush that came through here from all of the watershed.
Yeah.
We've got all these houses now that are being built. You've got the dirt that's loose. So it came in, it was really muddy, and it just never cleared up. It's just been this consistent brown.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you guys, if that made a difference.
Well, that's a great observation. Yeah, thanks. And again, that's what we saw happen with Lake Elsinore, right? It was a big rain event when it was flooding a bunch of areas that were burned, right? So you had an abnormal situation that occurred. So you had an influx of fresh water in a heavy rainstorm. You probably shifted the water quality to a certain extent. It's a possibility that it could have been a trigger as well. So, it's a good observation.
I live on the water, so I watched it, and
saw
I mean,
it.
I've seen the alum treatments. The water clears up. It looks better. I don't know whether it's better or not, but it looks better. It clears up.
Yeah.
But this time it didn't because of that rain event. Just came in and
it just hasn't
stayed.
gone back as far.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, thank you for being here, guys.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Oh, good evening. I guess I'm the last of the Mohegans.
One more.
Got one more. Okay, good. Well, first of all, thank you, subject matter experts, for being here and sharing your knowledge with the community. This is more towards the board. And what I would like to propose are either have a motion when you do have your meeting is a liaison. This task force has a liaison with our POA because some of the things that you specifically stated when you came out and you did your analysis in April, you only saw one species of fish. Well, there are several different fish that are in this lake. And I think that if you have a liaison, that now that we've made this an exigent problem, to work very close with this POA. The fact is that we have people that are online You had a lot of people here that were hotter than fish grease, wanting to have some answers. This liaison would help, hopefully from this, that we have a follow-up to this very important meeting that we had tonight. We don't want to have everybody just throw out all the problems and not have a solution. And I think that that solution would be very helpful from a liaison, that they can physically see that they're actually out here maybe getting different species of fish, helping out with the task force. I just think that that's a solution to the problem. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you. Yep.
I'd like to give in response to your comments, and appreciate your comments very much. One of the things that there was a meeting last week between the Water District, Lejeune, POA, City of Canyon Lake. Again, they get together monthly now to talk about how can we bring collective accountabilities and authorities to solve the problem. And one of the suggestions was instead of the POA, which is a consumer, having to work through these other bodies, why don't we, they recommended that we get a direct retainer with the scientists, and we are doing that. Okay, so we will have a direct contract to be able to get them more engaged actively as we need it. The other thing too, I want to take this opportunity to make this announcement, and that is, again, in our executive sessions this afternoon, one of the things that we discussed at length was we've talked to some former members who were involved in Canyon Lake, Ted and Nancy Horton, who've been here many years before. They were here when the lake was going through issues up through 2013, 2015, and so forth. A lot of good lessons learned, great experience that we all listened and were very impressed, and thank them for sharing that. After listening to that and hearing it, we are going to create and resurrect the lake, a lake management committee. Okay, so that we can engage our members to help be a part of that solution.
In addition to the fish, dying, the fish that are alive, there's been reports of strange behavior with the fish. A lot of reports of strange behavior with the birds, geese, ducks. Even a resident reported that a raccoon had come out of the lake or from drinking in the lake and was acting as if it had been poisoned. So with that being said, can you assure us 100% certain that it's okay to have body contact with the lake? The other thing is I think, like Director Cooney said, you need to be very clear about the information you're giving out. I've heard you kind of like laugh and say a couple times, well, I guess. Like, if you don't know, you need to be very clear and tell us, we don't know. Not like, well, maybe the boats can work. No, we don't know if the boats can work, because in this community, people go out and they go on Facebook, and then there's a lot of miscommunication, and this could actually make this situation a lot worse.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for your comment. Yeah. I'm not going to tell you 100% for certain that it's safe for body contact. Correct.
Yeah.
To be 100% certain, we would have to go out and collect some samples for specifically the cyanotoxins, which are the issue for humans and pets, and maybe this is the issue with the raccoon, I don't know. But cyanotoxins, which are not produced by golden algae, they're produced by other cyanobacteria, can be harmful to humans at certain levels, and so we don't know what those levels are because they haven't been sampled. Correct.
That flag is, the flags that are out there have to do with the speed of what speed you're able to use. The green flag means you can go up speed. The yellow flag means you have to be at no wake speed. Okay, so they're different things. The other indicators at each of the beaches and so forth have other signs. They're either yellow, orange, or red. So what we heard, what I heard is not 100% safe. And so the question is when it comes to golden algae, is golden algae harmful? We said there's no cyanotoxins is what we've said. There's no presence of human toxins. We said there's no presence of toxins in the lake. Eric, what's the specific language that we use? Let's be specific.
I don't think we ever said the word safe. I think we said we test for cyanotoxins and hazardous algae blooms prior to every major holiday for typical blue-green algae blooms. We did that, and all those tests came back non-detect. There were no cyanotoxins prior to Memorial Day, which we just tested. Which means, and those blooms are known to be harmful to humans. And what we have said, what we have heard from the scientists in Lejeune, because we're a private company, we're not water quality experts. What we have said is that there is a golden algae bloom happening, and golden algae is not known to be toxic to humans. It can be a skin and respiratory irritant, and if you choose to swim, you should rinse off when you're done. And don't ingest the water, and don't eat the fish, and that's exactly the message we have put out, period.
Yeah.
Hi, everybody. Good meeting. Thank you for putting this on and spending a lot of time on it. I notice a lot of the comments have been fairly adversarial. There's a lot of frustration, and I'm not sure it's being pointed in the right direction. I know that each of the board members I see in front of me live on the lake. They have boats. They're on the water. They have kids that they think about going in the water. It's a difficult situation, and they've kind of taken this on themselves to come up with a solution. They brought in some amazing experts. They've talked to some of the fishermen. They've talked to the people that live here. They've talked to people that are talking about buying a house on the lake and want some advice. It's a mess right now, but I think the steps have been made to bring it to a good solution that we can find out we're going to be on this lake for another 20, 30, 50 years, who knows. It's a special place in the world, and it's worth saving. And all the finger pointing in the world and you saying you should have done this or you should have done that is probably not going to be as helpful as if everybody's spending a little time coming together, putting our heads together and looking for the right solutions. The first solution may not be the final solution, but this lake's going to have houses around it for a long time.
Thank you. Yep.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak on this subject? One more? One more.
So I still haven't heard, what are other lakes that have golden algae doing? What has worked and what hasn't worked? And what are we going to do about it? I mean, I'm not hearing any, what are our options? I'm not hearing any options.
Yeah. Well, that's what we're here to, work on. And that's what we've just been doing fact finding to see what's happening and trying to address. We just got these results back about golden algae. This is new information. There are a lot of options that are out there to entertain that have various costs. And we've already talked about it, but some of them have drawbacks or unintended consequences. We need to make sure that we're taking the time to come up with the proper solution. And like I said, unfortunately, there's not an easy magic bullet for golden algae. If you've done a little bit of research, several of you have, it's not an easy thing to just treat and get rid of. So it is something that is a complex situation that we're going to work really hard on. I really appreciate, hearing from you all that live here and have anecdotal information about the behavior of the fish, the animals, other information. Anything that we can get like that is helpful, especially if it's timing, when it happens, photographs, whatever. So we appreciate that. You guys are seeing what happens day to day. We're scientists and we're trained in the work that we do, but we do value the input that we hear from you all.
So I want to add a couple comments to that. So we have been in contact with other lakes that had this golden algae issue. Lake Mission Viejo is one. East Lake Village in New Orleans is another one. Lake Elsinore is a third one. Okay, like you heard from our experts here on what happened in Lake Elsinore. Lake Mission Viejo, it's a private lake. It's not for drinking water. It's their own private lake. It's 100 acres, 125 acres.
120.
Yeah, 125 acres, about a fourth the size of our lake. They use copper sulfate. It killed everything. Okay, and it's been they've now they're now seeing some recurring issues that are coming up. They're actually now electing to go back to start using alum in their lake. We talked to East Lake Village. They did the same thing. A very small lake, a 15-acre lake. They had it. They brought in. They also again used copper sulfate and it killed all the material. They also did a technique where they put in some floating islands, where they put in some plant material that float in the lake and can help absorb some of the nutrients and things like that and oxygenate it and so forth. And they've had some success, albeit a smaller lake. So we are in contact with other lakes. Again, we're working in partnership with the water district, and we're evaluating all those options. Right now, the reason we cannot do copper sulfate in our lake is we are a drinking water reservoir, and we need a permit, we need a permit to be able to from the federal government to be able to treat it with the Clean Water Act. So we're looking at other measures. So I have a question for John and Chris. How long do you anticipate this will continue if we do nothing, if we let nature take its course?
That's a tough question to answer. Someone mentioned earlier, best case scenario, worst case scenario. Best case scenario, it could resolve on its own in a week or two. Worst case scenario, it could go on for a few months, I think. Typically, like I said, golden algae prefer the cooler months. We're getting into the warmer summer months here. So it's likely that this will dissipate. But I can't be 100% certain to say it will dissipate, but I can say it's likely. So, I mean, again, that's a tough question to answer. I don't know that there's any one specific temperature that you would need to hit to see that, but I mean, we measure all of our stuff in Celsius. So when we went out there and did it the last time I was out, it was like 18 Celsius.
I saw it's around 20.
Yeah, and
somewhere Celsius. But.
Right, and so I'd say Canyon Lake, I believe in the summertime gets up to 22, 23. So yeah, if it's going to happen, it's going to happen within the next month or so, that the water would warm up. Yeah. Yeah, there certainly are lists that we could suggest that are non-chemical solutions, one being the oxygenation like you're talking about, another being just overall circulation of the lake, whether it's fountains or something else of that nature to help mix the water, move the water around. Yeah.
No, we had conflicting things, but what we heard definitively now is that it is believed that will help. Okay, given that we have no more, maybe one more question.
Okay. Who was in charge of the math with the alumna treatment?
The math?
Yeah, the math.
Concentrations, well, that's between Leisure and our consultants. We calculate the dosage that.
Okay, so none of you?
Yes.
You?
I mean, not me specifically, but we have another
Okay,
person.
so if it were to be the aluminum or whatever it's called treatment, who do we, are you guys gonna try to pass the buck? Like it didn't happen? Like that wasn't the cause? Like it's just happened? And is this a different company you used this year? And it wasn't the same company Lake Elsinore used in 2019.
We've been using the same company since 2013 to do this work. And as far as again, what we go by is we have 40 years of literature that says that, you know, alum is safe. And that's what we're going by. We don't, you know, our concentrate, we have.
Right, the
we have-
40 years, but you guys used a less amount this time and our lake is a little higher. And there's something, someone said that their dam isn't being used.
No.
Sorry if I don't have
we,
that
we
correct.
try to do the same concentration every time we apply, but because the lake level changes, our
Right.
calculations
But
of
it
how much.
sounded like you guys did less this time from what I'm hearing. If
If
I could be wrong.
The last application was a
15.
spring. We do lower, every spring we do a lower concentration than we do in the fall.
Right, I meant the year prior. I heard it was 25 the year prior, and then it was 15. The guy that said he watched all the trucks come in for the anecdotal.
Again, I don't, you know, I can't speak on that. Are the trucks all full? I don't, the
So-
number of trucks, but again, the fall applications generally have more trucks.
Right.
And the spring will have less, but
okay.
but again,
So who's going to investigate that? Do you guys investigate yourself or who do we, I mean, and I mean this with all respect.
yeah, I'm not sure how to investigate it. You know, there's only one wholesaler that sells alum within our region. And so we've been using the same wholesale alum distributor since I don't know if we've changed alum over time, but we're using the same alum manufacturer. It's a wholesaler. They do, I mean, they do their concentration based on huge batches. They're making, you know, tanker trucks of this at a time. I was going to say there's not really any cookie crumb trail to follow anywhere.
Can we get digitally accurate with how much we've applied year over year for the last?
Yeah, we have.
Yeah.
We have our.
Digitally accurate, right? You bought chemicals, you shipped it on a California.
We know
ship
exactly
load.
how many gallons we bought.
Yeah, we have an exact dose for each time it's
So,
put out there.
Another member earlier kind of alluded to this, that your numbers kind of trailed off at some year in the distant past. Can we get more accurate data?
Yeah, yeah.
We can put a summary together that has the application and the volume at the lake level when it was applied, yeah.
I think that would help, at least if we could see it,
Yeah.
see the data.
We'll put that together, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, board, for advocating for us.
Yeah, and this applicator is Aquatechnics. They've been doing applications across the United States for decades. They're a professional that does the application. So just putting that out there too. So we're working with a professional on it. So yeah, but thank you for your questions.
And one more.
Thank you for all the information. It's been quite an interesting evening. But, you know, we're talking about data points. And one data point that I think would be worth chasing down is why is the North Ski Lake so much healthier than the main lake, at least in color right now? And I didn't hear a clear answer to this earlier, but did we do alum at the same time in the North Ski Lake this year in the spring as we did the main lake?
Yes. With every application, there is an application to the North Ski area. Again, we started doing these in 2013. I don't remember what year we started doing the North Causeway. It's maybe 8 years ago, 10 years ago, I'm not sure.
Okay, but we did it this,
We do the same application every fall and the same one every spring.
so it just, there's a distinct difference between what's going on in the North Lake right now and what's in the main lake.
Is that difference potentially what underneath, right? What I've been told is that there's a lot of grasses that are underneath that lake that provides for more oxygen and catching more of the nutrients. Because I agree with this.
I mean, there's no
gentleman.
golden algae.
Go
in
and
the
look
North
at it. It is
Ski Lake.
definitively very different.
I would just throw anecdotally that North Ski area, that's the San Jacinto River. So if you have flow coming into the river, you're constantly moving waters.
This gets to that residence time that we talked about earlier, right? Because that water is constantly moving coming into the lake. And so you do have a little bit of more turnover there than you would in the lake.
Well, maybe that's the answer. Jump lake.
We do the jump ski lagoon.
And we don't apply to the jump lagoon, but again, is it, what's the area above the jump lagoon that drains into that area? Because what we have in Salt Creek is, I think we had a lot of sediment come down Salt Creek. We potentially have a lot of sediment coming down the San Jacinto River during the storms, but after the storms are over, then it's more or less slower, clearer flow coming in for a long period of time into the lake.
Okay. Thank you.
Can I just throw in we assume that when the lake warms up, that the golden algae will no longer be propagating like it did at this time. However, there's over 2,000 types of algae species. I don't know how many cyanobacteria strains. There's the possibility, again, the golden algae might like lower nutrient concentrations, but the cyanobacteria like higher nutrient concentration. So when it warms up, if there's a lot of nutrients in the water, then you have the potential for other algal species taking over.
Right. Yeah. You're right.
Chris, John, and Rick, I want to thank you so much for coming down and spending your evening with us. I really appreciate your insight, and we welcome your partnership in this, so thank you.
Great. Thank you guys all.
So with that, let's return to our regularly scheduled program. Are there any public officials left that would like to come up and speak to us? Director Darcy Burke, come on down.
Welcome, new board members. What a great first meeting, right? It's been a long night, and I know you have a lot of business to get through. One of the things that Mayor Mark Terry and I want to remind everybody is we are hosting coffee like we normally do on the first Wednesday of every month. So if you have questions that didn't get answered, we're going to do our best to try and answer them in the morning. I am going to tell you that EBMWD does use copper sulfate by the dam. That is our algicide. We do have a permit. We've been doing that for a long time. So can copper sulfate be used in a drinking water reservoir? The answer is yes, if it's permitted. Diamond Valley Lake had golden algae in the fall. Their limologist and one of their water quality managers, Dr. Terry Slipko, used copper sulfate, dumped it in Diamond Valley Lake to address it, but also realized they're very conservative. There's no body contact in Diamond Valley Lake. There was also no fishing for those days, 3 days before and a few days after. So careful what you ask for, right? Because there are consequences besides the environment. Environment's nice, but my job is to ensure public health, not fish health. But the fish are a great indicator that something's wrong, right? So you have to look at this holistically. The best thing that I've seen happen since I came back from vacation was that the POA, the City of Canyon Lake, LEJWA, SAPA, and EBMWD are sitting at the table on a regular basis coming up with action plans, not sitting there looking at each other. And I know everybody wants an answer right now. Well, if I was the water czar and they made me queen of all water, I know exactly what I would do, but they didn't do that. And I don't have that power. So in other words, it has to be cooperation, collaboration, and we have to figure it out together. And that's what's happening right now. But I think what also is important that's missing is communication. It would be very nice if there was a page on the POA's website where people could go get updates, not on Facebook, not on Instagram, on a website that they would give updates. I think we could do the same thing at the water district. We have a page normally dedicated to Canyon Lake. We could do the same thing. So people don't have to ask, what's the latest sampling report look like? What's our monitoring look like? They can go and look for it and know what's going to happen. Since you've reinvigorated the lake, was I think the dredging committee, but now it's the lake management committee. When's their meetings? What's posted? What's coming up? Because people are wanting information. And I just want to thank Chris Papavero for collecting fish for me and putting it on ice, because we were going to make sure this time that toxicology happened. And that was a step in the right direction. And for all those people that have called me and asked questions and not relied on Chat GPT or Google or their brother or their sister or their cousin to be the expert, I appreciate it. Calling and asking where to find good information, asking what might be best practices or where to look, thank you. And not just being keyboard warriors to stir the pot, because that doesn't help any of us. My phone number is everywhere. So if you can't make coffee, I'm happy to give you my phone number again, 951-634-9019. I will answer it. I will text you back. This is not a switch. We can't flip it and things get better. It didn't get this condition overnight, although it seems like it did. It's not going to get fixed overnight. But I'm happy to take any questions.
Darcy, can you address the gentleman's comment or question earlier about the possibility of letting some water out so that fresh water can be purchased?
So that's a couple of things. The good news is for all of your health and safety, they don't let me operate any equipment at Elsinore Valley. So I will tell you, I've had a request, not this past Easter, but the Easter before. A resident in the East Bay got a new boat and they had company. And they asked me to lower the lake so they could get their boat through the tunnel. Is Art still here or did Art leave? Did Art leave? One of the things he wanted me to work on when I got elected is to make sure that lake did not go down, no matter what. So I'm saying that because it's a reservoir. It's not a lake. You call it a lake, but it's a reservoir. So we manage it based on what we're doing with drinking water. So whether we exercise those gates and then send all that golden algae and stuff down the stream to Lake Elsinore is a whole other question, because now there's environmental impacts. It's not just about our lake. I have to look at the whole watershed.
I understand that. I'm just but the question was raised, and I think it was a good question. Are there other ways to release water and have fresh water?
Over the dam is the way it's released, unless it's an emergency, and the emergency would be that the dam would fail. So, yeah, that's the only time we open the gates or the valves. Purchasing more water and having it spill over purposefully into Lake Elsinore, not in this current condition because of the impact it would have on Lake Elsinore. In the future, possibly, but that would be something that beneficiary pays.
From my understanding, it wouldn't solve the problem anyway, because you wouldn't be moving the water on the bottom of the reservoir. Is that accurate?
Most likely, no. It'd just be coming in the top like it normally does. I didn't hear the question in the back. We usually exercise them once a year. I know when the dam safety comes to renew our permit. We had pieces we had to replace, and they were customized pieces, so they may have been open twice this year, but normally it's once. Come to coffee and find out. I can answer that question. So why, the question was, because I know people are at home, they can't hear you, Chuck. Why, if we're not using the lake right now as a reservoir that's operating because of the treatment plant, why are they treating alum right now? So the alum and the treatment plant really have nothing to do with each other. The alum is for the total maximum daily loads in the body of water. That actually feeds also down to Lake Elsinore. So the Regional Water Quality Control Board actually in 1998 made Canyon Lake and Lake Elsinore an impaired water body. When that impaired water body happened, we had to take action to repair that. And LEJWA was formed, not immediately. It takes time to form a new government entity. And that's when all the polluters, quote unquote, upstream started to pay into the fund. LEJWA was formed, and they came up with a plan based on what they thought was best practices to contain the total maximum daily load. It had nothing to do with operating the treatment plant. That is not up for me to decide. That would actually be a LEJWA thing. So Jeremy is your representative on LEJWA for Canyon Lake. So he would be the one that would represent your interests. So Canyon Lake does have a voice. Let me be very clear. The city of Canyon Lake has a seat, and Councilman Jeremy Smith is your representative.
We said the POA does not have
Yeah,
a seat.
the Property Owners Association doesn't have a seat because we're a private company. The city of Canyon Lake does have a seat, and they do contribute to LEJWA's funding.
So we all do. It all comes out of the same pocketbook. My rates, your dues, the city's taxes. I don't have a separate wallet for each of you. It all comes out of the same one.
So Darcy, you, correct me if I'm wrong, I thought I heard you say it would be nice if the POA had a web page about water quality and what's happening with
Just
the lake.
in real time. So like as you get the monitoring results, if they're up.
We do.
Oh, okay.
You go to our Canyon Lake POA page,
Mhm.
just search for lake conditions. There's a whole page about lake conditions. We posted the LEJWA strategic plan for 2025. All of our lake updates that we've made are also here. Testing
Maybe we could put a button on the front page for right now. Rick?
Yeah,
So we don't have to search for it. That would be great.
easy.
Thank you. That was easy.
Any other questions or comments? I hope we're done by the time of you have your coffee with the
Well,
mayor in the morning.
So
Moving on. It's been a long night. We were going to talk about the 2025-26 board goals. We did meet in session. It's been a long night. We're going to table that and talk about that next at the July meeting because everyone has been here for a long time. So we're going to push that on. With that said, are there any members that would like to speak on any items that do not remain on the agenda other than the lake or fish?
I do have one, Mr. President.
We have one.
Uh-huh.
Who is it?
Donna Ritchie.
Sorry?
Donna Ritchie.
Donna Ritchie. Okay.
Come on up.
Before you start my time, can you hear me? Okay. Well, before we start that, I just want to say congratulations to Director Cooney and MedVed and being reelected to Director Bill. And I want to state that what I'm about to, the statements I'm about to make are not directed at Directors Cooney and MedVed because they were not on the board at the time. So whenever you're ready, let me know. Ready? In April, a rotted light pole at Golf Field collapsed on the batting cages, completely crushing them. Fortunately, the incident occurred during Easter break and no children were present at the time, a circumstance many consider a matter of luck or divine protection, as there are numerous kids in and around the batting cages at any given time, and the consequences could have been catastrophic. 7 months prior, members of the league submitted written safety concerns and warned that the pole was a hazard waiting to happen. Photos of the pole's advanced state of decay were included. Despite these warnings, the POA told them that the pole would be replaced after the spring season, which was 8 months away. 6 months later, 1 month prior to the collapse of the pole, President Van Vliet acknowledged the severity of this issue at a March POA meeting when he stated, "It's an 18-inch pole, and right now we can drive a screwdriver 9 inches into that. We're concerned in particular if we have high winds." This public admission makes it clear that the POA was well aware of the pole's hazardous conditions, yet there were no warning signs posted at the site and no precautions were taken to restrict access to the area, even though the POA stated in an email 7 months earlier that signage would be up shortly. The president's statement directly contradicts Director Alice Cook's statements to residents that the pole had been inspected and deemed safe. That claim raised immediate skepticism, and given the visible extent of the decay, many residents questioned whether a legit inspection had occurred. On one day after the pole collapsed, I asked President Van Vliet about the inspection, and he initially said in a text message that he would provide me with the information the following day. However, the next day he stated he had no information and that I could make a public information request. This only fueled further speculation on whether the pole was inspected. I submitted a public information request seeking the name of the inspection company as well as the date and outcome of the inspection. The POA's response was that the requested information did not constitute an association record and they would not be providing me with a response to my question. However, when I followed up with another email, the POA's attorney responded and stated that the POA does not have any association records or enhanced association records responsive to my request. If the pole was professionally inspected, as the POA claimed, there would be a record of it. So, was the community misled about the inspection and the safety of the pole? This incident has raised serious concerns about the POA's commitment to public safety and transparency and communicating risks to the community. It is difficult to overstate the gravity of what could have occurred had that pole fallen during a game or practice. There is little doubt that the lives would have been lost. Had that pole fallen this week during the league's Tournament of Champions, it could have cost the lives of children outside of our community and put them at risk, as well as the Canyon Lake children. If the POA did in fact have the pole inspected, I urge the POA to be transparent and release that information. If the pole was not inspected, I urge the POA to take accountability. The community, especially the Little League parents, deserve clear answers about why repeated warnings were ignored and why accountability remains elusive. Moving forward, I hope the POA will learn from this and implement a formal safety protocol to ensure POA structures and equipment are routinely inspected and maintained and not ignore warning signs from residents to prevent future tragedies from happening. On a final note, I'd also like to
Please
say,
wrap up.
I'm disappointed. I didn't see any information put out to the community about the dangers of this pole, that the pole had fallen, what had happened. Matter of fact, I saw a picture of one cone sitting next to the pole after it had fallen initially. So we're talking about the children of our community. Like, it would have been catastrophic. The batting cages were completely crushed.
Thank you, Donna.
No.
Okay, all right. Well, moving forward, we can carry on with the remaining business at hand. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor of approving the consent agenda, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Or abstain?
Director Cooney, are you going to vote? Are you going to abstain? Okay, so hearing 3 in favor, 1 abstain, motion carries.
All right. All right. Tiffany?
Good evening. Thank you for everybody who stayed this long. So this is a continuation of the 28-day reading presented last month for the courts and fields rules. So the Rules and Regulations Review Committee was tasked with reviewing and improving the current rules and regulations with the goal of making it a more concise, cohesive, user-friendly document. So this rule aims to streamline the rules, eliminate redundancies, and we're basically merging basketball courts, golf field, pickleball courts, and tennis courts into one section titled Courts and Fields, and it will reduce our rules by 8 pages. It's recommended that the Board of Directors approve this rule as presented.
Okay, we're on item 8.2. So is there a motion to approve the 28-day reading? I'll make the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Any community member comments on this item? Any board member comments on the item? All in favor of approving the 28-day reading to revise the fine schedule for the rules as stated, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed?
Hearing four in favor, motion carries. And can I just correct that it's 8.3 for the courts and fields?
Sorry.
Thank
okay.
you. That's okay. Just making sure.
Sorry, I thought you had 8.1, so I'm going to come back to 8.1.
No, I'm not 8.1. I think Greg's 8.1.
Greg is, yeah.
Yep. So I'm good. Thank you.
My
guys.
apologies, thank you.
No worries.
All right, Greg, you've got 8.1, 28-day reading on use of personal electric vehicles.
E-bikes. I know some people came for those, so as most of you know, just before Fiesta Day, the board adopted an emergency resolution prohibiting the use of personal electric vehicles, including e-bikes, electric scooters, skateboards, and similar devices at the Lodge Peninsula, including Canyon Club Drive west of Lighthouse Drive, and the Holiday Harbor area, including the parking lot, and launch ramp. This emergency action was taken in response to ongoing safety concerns and incidents of reckless operation in those areas, particularly during holidays and major events. I have not talked to anybody that didn't think that this ban had a significant effect on the use of those types of vehicles during Fiesta Day at those locations. It was a great success. Community Patrol did a fantastic job of coordinating and enforcing the ban. And so the board is here tonight to consider making this restriction or rule permanent. And the way we do that is to, if the board so desires, vote in favor of converting this effectively into a 28-day ruling, which, as most of you know, it's kind of a cooling off period where people can look at it, comment on it. Comments can come from the entire community. The board can figure out if they want to amend it before they finalize it after the 28-day reading, which will be at the next board meeting. So that's the purpose of why this is on the agenda. As I said, it seemed to go well, so let's consider making it a permanent rule.
Is there a motion to approve the 28-day reading?
Motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
I'd like to propose a subsidiary motion. This rule currently has no fee or fine associated with it. I'd like to propose that there's a $500 fine for violation of this new rule.
Okay, we have a subsidiary motion. Is there a second to add a fine to this motion?
Second.
Okay. So a first and a second. Any member comments on this? If you like, come on forward and please give us your opinion.
Can we add other parks? I witnessed children coming out of Indian Beach. I almost hit one of them. And then I was just coming down Continental as I came home. And they just, there's hundreds of them, felt like hundreds of them. And they just came right in front of me, and then they just did their thing. And I just waited for them and just said, hey, I'm not in a hurry. But I'm wondering, can we add the other parks to this? And can we make it a higher fine?
So, so Don, I think I want to go back to the motion on the fines to be clear about what those fines are, because I think that's important. The motion that Director Medved is simply with regards to being in those areas. That's the starting fine of 500. However, we have, right, it's $1,000. So,
1,000.
so I just want to be like, this is where information is really clear because we had a big discussion about it. And so I think it's important. So if interpret it any way you want, but if I'm driving around in those areas, shouldn't be there, it's a fine of $500, but it will, those fines compound based on the additional offenses that, so if you're ripping up the lawn, you're doing burnouts, you know, those kinds of things, there is an additional $1,000 fines on top of that. So I just want to.
Fantastic.
And if it's on a holiday weekend, they're tripled.
That aligns with my original subsidiary motion.
That's amazing. Just to let you know, they're using Indian Beach as a pump track. Okay, that's all. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Marianne Gibson, and I live at 22171 Village Way Drive. And the reason why I give you my address is I live directly across from Holiday Harbor Park. I watched on Sunday, I watched this constantly where the kids, patrol is called, they'll send a patrol car down, the kids will encircle them, they're mouthy. I can watch the whole thing. I live right across the park. I videotape this. Anyways, and I'll call for backup. It doesn't matter if they have the ability to send another person. There's more than probably a dozen of these kids. They go through the grass, they grow. I mean, I think obviously the idea of improving the fines is a start, but how are you able to do this when they're in the grass, not probably near any of your ability to see them with cameras? So, you know, they're pretty smart to know where they cannot be seen. You know, I watch them tear up the lawn. I see you guys reseed it. It's a continuous problem. I live next to a vacant lot. When the patrol does come, I live on the back of an easement. They come up the easement. They go up there. They hide. They know they're being chased. And they stay up there on the easement next, or on the lot next to me that's vacant. I've asked, you know, the city, or maybe anyways, I've contacted somebody to ask that vacant lot somehow be monitored with, you know, better, you know, there's no security, there's no fencing other than no trespassing signs. I realize this is a problem for all of us. I don't know as a citizen what I can do. I can record it, but, you know, I don't know if that's helpful. It feels like I live there with my mother, you know, and so she's elderly. I don't want to instigate it, you know, so.
Yeah, thank you for those comments. We get those from others as well. We've had similar ones with other residents who have a fear of saying things, and we completely understand. I will tell you, one of the most successful techniques that we have, because they do evade a lot, is video surveillance. Okay, if you have cameras, if you have house cameras, if you take your cell phone and take pictures and submit it, then we can and we have prosecuted based on that incident, and we always keep it confidential.
So they know when I'm taping them.
Mm.
Yeah. So I do have cameras on
Yep.
my property. And I've asked my husband that we're probably going to have to put out more facing that property, because now we're into summer and now it's game on for them, and they know it's game on.
So you're right. No one thing is going to solve this.
I know.
But I think it's a lot easier to solve than the complex lake problem, right?
Oh, I agree. I
And
agree.
So we spent a lot of time today not just talking about fines. That's only going to be one part of it.
True.
But if you issue 11 tickets and they're all written because they're $100,
Yeah.
that means that the pain of that is not significant enough
True.
to get people involved, right?
True.
So the perimeter of the parks, we talked today about relooking at our registration program. We talked about other ways of bike identification. We've spent 2 hours today at least just continuing to brainstorm and iterate on, you know, what we can do. It remains a huge, you know, topic. I think it's, to your point, as a homeowner, it's definitely, a problem or an issue, but I think ultimately we're also just concerned a lot
Oh,
about
yes.
the safety, both of the children, but also of the person that unfortunately might be the person who hits them. I mean, Dawn
Yes.
just spoke to it. It's like we're all deathly afraid of pulling out of our driveway. So,
Yeah.
and the other thing is that I very strongly believe that the vast majority of these kids are riding them appropriately. I think we've got a couple of groups that, and so when the question comes up, it's like, yeah, but the good kids want to. That's exactly why we want to take these measures, so that the good kids and the good parents can continue to enjoy the fun of these vehicles. But unfortunately, these are the things that are happening. So you're right. The fine, that's just one part of it, but we are really doubling down on everything creative, to the most basic things. And so we'll just continue to work at this and work at this, but it's not, nobody's sitting here tonight going like, that's just it. And I really feel bad for you. I think it's bad for all of us, but when your house is sitting right in the middle of the danger zone,
It is.
you have a special pain that the rest of us do not.
Yeah. The one thing that it is a comfort though is that basically I can keep providing video and I can go ahead and upload it to security at canyonlakepoa.com.
Right.
Correct? I believe that's the, and so they know that, I have gone out and I have asked them kindly. Some of them are respectful. I'm not saying that the majority of them are not. But I do feel vulnerable being that I have an 85-year-old mother who is handicapped and blind. And it's very disconcerting for her when the dog is barking and they're riding their bikes in front of my front door and throwing dirt intentionally. And I can't stop that. All I can do is say, please. And they'll say, but your doors are shut. Your windows are shut. It doesn't matter. It comes into my house. It comes onto my windows, my doors. But anyways, I appreciate it. I do know that, like you said, I'll be diligent. I'll send my footage. I know you're working on it. I appreciate that. I just wanted to know my concern.
Thank you.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
that.
28-day reading is to not allow any bicycles, scooters, et cetera, in this area, correct?
Riding.
Riding, so you can walk your bike. Does it say that in here?
Yes.
Is it clear?
Yes.
Okay. I think I think we need a balance. I think there was, a lot of people are going to appreciate what you're doing with the e-bike, so thank you for that. But I think there needs to be a balance. There was a time where the POA residents thought the fines were too low. And I think in this case, $500 for the first offense might be too high. Like maybe a $250 fine the first time and make the second time 500. Not every community patrol will give a warning. And so my concern is that people that don't know are just getting fined left and right $500. So my other suggestion is that there is signage that states not only about bicycles not being in this area, but that there is a $500 fine associated with it so that it's very clear. And if we're not going to do that, I think $250 for the first time is a lot, but I appreciate your efforts.
We did discuss putting up signs, because once the barricades came down from the holidays, there weren't specific signs up. So that is something that
And
is-
once it passes, we would.
Yes.
But it's 20.
Right, because otherwise, how are people going to know? Even the residents, how would they know?
Fair comments. Thank you. Appreciate that. Pete?
I was a kid and I love e-bikes. I love motorcycles. I was on them when I was a kid and I did a lot of stuff like going on here now. But it's out of control here and there is a problem and somebody's going to get killed. But the problem is the kids that live here are registered and have their license plates so we can catch them on the videos. The kids that are coming up from Canyon Hills, how do we catch those guys? They don't have license plates. They come in this lake and they're probably the number one people that are causing problems around here. So we need to figure out, and I know I have no answer. I know it's a difficult situation, but we got to figure out how do we keep these kids that aren't registered and that not residents of this lake from driving across the golf course and damage and stuff like happened down there on the dock. I mean, I'm glad they did catch those kids because he had a record and they noticed, they could figure out his by facial recognition, but most of these kids that are coming in outside of the lake are the ones causing the damage And I think
Actually,
fine.
that's not entirely
accurate
true.
statement.
What's that?
It's not
It's
accurate.
not an accurate statement,
How do you figure that? How are you coming up with these facts?
because some of the kids that have currently been caught live right here in our lovely community.
Of course, they've been caught. The ones that don't have registration, how do you catch them?
Yeah, but the statement that the damage is being done more from outside people
Oh,
than
no,
inside
not-
people.
well, that
That's
may be-
what I'm saying is an inaccurate.
That may be
statement.
inaccurate,
Okay.
but what I'm saying is the ones that are outside of here, there's no way to monitor that. And there's no way really to stop them from coming in because there's so many ways these kids can get in here. I don't know the answer. I'm just saying that's a concern.
So,
And I don't think $500 is too much. I think we need to do what we need to do to deter the parents, to get these parents to be accountable for their children. Because the only thing that's going to hurt them is the pocketbook. And I think $500.
so I'd like to ask Eric a quick question. How many e-bikes do we have registered in the community?
920, I think we heard
Have you
today.
seen 920 tags going around the city, around the community? That's because they're tucking it up underneath their seats. So we're taking a hard look at, how do we plate these bikes? How do we track them? And how do we deal with the issues, the fact that we don't see 900 tags going throughout the city?
I think, I appreciate your comments. Pete.
It's
What-
a hard problem to solve. I don't have the answers and I know you
Yeah.
guys are digging in and trying, but I'm
Appreciate
not
it.
sure what to do.
Thank you. So last, in orientation 2 weeks ago, we came up with 5 measures that we're putting in place to take action on. This is another step and it will be a continuous step. And we've had a lot of discussions and we will continue the evaluation until we get better control on it.
Can I speak real quick to the outside e-bikes? We do know who the usual suspects that are coming in our exit lanes and causing trouble here. We're identifying these kids. We're talking to the schools. We're talking to the sheriff, and we're handing them over evidence on a silver platter. Here's who this person is. Go get them. And we are identifying the members that are entering illegally.
Carolyn Van Vliet. I don't know my tracking lot, sorry. I was just asking the question on the 28-day read, does it have anything to do with the e-bikes using common places for the electricity? I was in a meeting this afternoon and one of the ladies said that she was down at the tennis courts and this kid was saying, hey, I just want to charge my bike at the tennis courts. I feel like, it's not up to me to pay for your e-bike personally. And she said some other kid was actually literally riding on the tennis courts and doing circles, and she was trying to be very respectful to this child and say, hey, you can't be riding on the tennis courts. He was very rude. She said the child trying to use electricity was quite polite. And I thought we were going to lock up the electricity during that event. I don't know if that happened. I didn't witness any of that happening, but will that be part of the 28-day read too, that maybe our electricity is locked up all the time unless I decide to call the POA and say, hey, I need to use the tennis court area. I don't know what we call that area to have a party. And then somebody comes and unlocks it for me personally because I'm using it for the party. But for the rest of the time, could it just be locked up so that these kids can't come in from out of the community, use our electricity and then go right around our, anyway, that's just my thought.
That is our default now. And if you see somebody plugged into an outlet that's functioning, let me or Steve know, because to my knowledge, in all the public areas, we're locking out any outlets that have public access.
Yeah, so that was an executive action we took 2 weeks ago, and it should be, and if we're not following it, let us know. That's good. What is in this 28-day reading is just the personal use of vehicles, making the ban we had at these 2 areas permanent. That's what's in this 28-day reading.
Okay, Tiffany Paul, I need to put my address, don't I? No, not, okay, that used to be the case. Okay, so I have a few notes here that I tried to take. Let's see. So I really truly think that it needs to be a little less for the first offense. I am all about this rule. I was following a car in front of me today that was following somebody, a kid that was doing a wheelie, I don't know what else it's called, on one wheel. And we were, so I'm all about this rule. I called the sheriff's last night when I was at Canyon Hills because there were motorbikes on the Canyon Hills Park. They called me within 10 minutes of responding to find the people, and they, of course, had left by then. But I know that that is a solid response factor. So if we could call the POA to respond, and let's see. Have we looked at other communities? I've been to Liso Viejo. They have certain rules. Other small communities like us that are gated, that are not a city specifically, very similar. They have specific rules as well. I know it's a problem nationwide. It's not just us. And I don't want somebody to be killed, but $500 is a lot. And I know the parents need a week up. I have little ones. They don't have e-bikes, and their friends have e-bikes, but that's a lot of money for a first offense. And then for 18 and over, if an 18 or if a parent that doesn't follow our rules, doesn't know follow the social media and the emails, if somebody doesn't follow those things, $500 is a lot of money.
Thanks for that. And by the way, we are looking at other cities. The one big difference again is our city uses the Riverside Sheriff, which is whereas a lot of other municipalities have their own resident law enforcement, and we're working that with the city. But that's a big difference between us and other places. But we are benchmarking against other communities as well.
Thank you for your comments. We actually had a very rigorous debate about that in our meeting today. Bill, you'll have to, like, in this situation, but do we have to do that tonight, or we do have to do that tonight? Okay, because we did have a really good discussion about that, because some of those same concerns.
And then also finally, the last point is the golf course. I saw yesterday, I was coming back from Canyon Hills, and I see two kids that were riding on Railroad, and then sure enough, they go into the golf course, and I'm pulling into the community. I'm talking to my kids in the back seat, and I'm telling them, oh, these kids we're gonna see them, and sure enough, they come right across from us and continue down Continental, and I'm like, oh, there you go. Well, and they're like, wait, people can come into our community without the gate? And I said, oh, yeah. There's no way. And I understand the golf course is open, but, we might need to look at other, factors in that. If people can't walk the sidewalks at the golf course, then maybe they can't go on.
You're not supposed to ride on them either.
Yeah.
Believe it or not. So, but yes, we are looking at those as well. Again, this is going to take a number of measures, and we're really kind of doing it one step at a time. Appreciate the feedback.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I would like to represent a parent of two children that have e-bikes, and we were literally not only in the safety committee or security committee, a part of talking about this e-bike registration in early days, about the hopefulness of what it will bring to safety to the community. And I think a lot of the ideas when we were originally talking about e-bike registration were very hopeful in that we were talking about positive reinforcement, about rewards. And my daughter and my son were both one of the recipients of the gift card. And we're talking about, for a kid, $10 is like $1 million, right? So this was a huge deal for them. And I've deleted all the community pages, and it's unfortunate because as a business owner, community pages are a huge part of promoting your business. But unfortunately, it's become wildly negative, so much that it affects your psyche throughout the day. So can we change the narrative on what e-bikes is by promoting more positive, more good kids, right? All we hear about is bad kids. My kids both have registrations on their bikes, and they know that yellow tag also comes with the responsibility of representing their parents and their last name. I guess the areas in which we're deeming, that bikes can't ride in are also some of the best places that I like to send my children when they're talking about going to, Sunset to meet with their friends and do this stuff. And unfortunately, this is not exactly a walking community. For children that are, 10 to 15 years old, this is going to be their primary form of transportation. We're talking about taking away, some of the biggest parks that they may even go to. I think ultimately we need to teach responsibility to our children, and the onus does fall onto the parents. But that being too, we have a lot of programs out there to encourage this good behavior. And while we may be giving these gift cards out, we're really not seeing that information coming back. And I think that would really help. And to the parents out there that do have these e-bikes, you know, it is on us. If that yellow tag, we should wear that proudly as that we're safe, that we do the right thing, and that we respect the authority that is around. Are you seeing that the bike registration program is working? Are we getting positive stuff from it? Are the kids that are getting pulled, do they have tags on? Or are they not even registered? Because that's the offense, right?
So thank you, Tony, for those comments, and thank you for being a responsible parent. We need more of parents like you in the community. Is it having an impact? Well, we have 900 and some odd registered, and when you got involved, we were celebrating our 100th, right? That was the first one. So we were happy about that. So it is making an impact. I will tell you, I see very, very, very few tags. Very few tags.
I can drive around and see the bikes and
Yeah,
see a yellow tag on them.
I don't see them either. So here's the issue. If we see it, don't as our security see it too? And if we're addressing the issue, right? I say, look, $500 fine. Yeah, that's steep. That's wild. Make it $2,000 for not a tag. I mean, I don't really want to, put out all these crazy fines here, but like the real problem is we set a rule and we didn't abide by it. We didn't enforce it. Now we're going to make another rule. Do we really think we're going to enforce that either?
Well, we are, and we're talking about those things. And again, it's the chicken and the egg. You can't enforce it if you don't have a rule, if you don't have, and so we have to start somewhere. And so that's one of the reasons we're extending. The reason for this rule being proposed, this 28-day reading, is because we are extending what we felt was a successful program 2 weeks or a week ago.
Yeah, no, I think it was cool. I'm going to be totally candid with you guys. Let's start with enforcing the rules that we have before we start tacking on other rules, because all this affects is my good children who now can't go to these parks.
Yeah.
And they've never broken rules. In fact, we encourage them to come back, right? Hey, you bring back a good cookie ticket or whatever you get, like we'll double it. Like, let's do that. But there's too many kids rolling around with no registration and nobody's doing anything about that. Where's all the fines for those people?
We are.
You know?
You'll see there were 23 fines done this month. So anyway, appreciate your comment.
Yeah.
Note taken. Thank you for your input.
I'd like to speak in favor of the increased fines. I think the radicalized e-bike kids have brought this on themselves. Some of these e-motorcycles they ride are $3,000, $4,000, even $5,000. So if they can, spend that kind of money to show off and stunt and run people off the road and bump into golf carts and, just generally cause them, make themselves into little juvenile delinquents causing problems for the whole community that's up in arms about this. I don't think there's any problem with it. To put a finer point on it, thank you. To put a finer point on it, we just got yelled at because there was a pole that was rotted at the kids' baseball park, and because we saw there was a problem, we didn't react fast enough. All of a sudden, you get berated for it. You can't just wait till some kid gets killed before you take action. So I'd like to support the increase.
Thank you, Paul.
We recently bought e-bikes. We're parents, but we don't let our kids ride freely, obviously. I think there's other things that can be implemented before just smacking a $500 fine down. I think the $500 fine, people are thinking that it's going to solve a problem abroad, when I think it breaks down much deeper than that with, like, for instance, people coming from outside. Like, we're taking the brunt and the punishment for people that are also outside making issues. I think there's other ways to go about it that we can implement first. Like I've never gotten a speeding ticket in the lake, but from what I understand, it's like $50, $100, and $300. So why is a car only getting a $50 to $100 when a vehicle is much bigger and can hit something and cause way more ruckus than versus one kid getting hit, which is awful, of course, too. But I think that the fines, I mean, yes, implement a fine, but I think there should be some type of like system here, like, because it seems just a little bit like the loud ones that are really mad about something that is not only just people in the community, it's other people are going to suffer for it as well. And I think there should be like some type of training maybe, or maybe like 14 and over can't be riding around or under can't be riding around by themselves without a parental privilege. Like, I don't know, I feel like there's multiple other things that can be implemented before just like, here, $500. Oh no, let's just raise it now. Because I mean, let's be honest, everyone's pocketbook is different. So $500 is nothing to some people, but to some people that's a lot. Or, you know, I mean, where do you draw the line here? I feel like it needs to be a little bit more organized. I said that. I said you and I ride bikes together without kids. Oh yeah, or yeah, maybe even separate it like that. I mean, if you have a driver's license, then you can ride your bike.
Just to be clear on this policy, you can still come to the lodge as an adult. We just ask that you walk it from the stop sign here down. Oh, it's 1 block. Understood.
Yeah.
I understand that.
But that's just my
Appreciate it.
question. I'm not here to try to complain. I just want to
No,
give
appreciate
another
the
option.
feedback. Thank you.
Not just like the few that come here and then it gets slapped on, and then what does that turn into? That it turns into no e-bikes ever, like, and then it's the same situation, like where, you know, you come to 1 or 2 meetings and then it's implemented, because we all know that a lot of rules don't typically get reversed. So I feel like it's important to really thoroughly think about the decisions that we make and then maybe get more further into it if it's not working.
Thank you for your input. Appreciate it. Any other comments? I will add one. I appreciate all the comments everyone had to say. I will add one thing. As I've heard from other people in the community, one concern that a member spoke to me and said, you know, they're concerned that by doing something like this, it's no longer a family-friendly community. And I don't think that's the intent. This is really about safety. When you're down here in the evenings in particular, the kids sometimes ride in packs, and they ride on they're doing their wheelies and they're showing off their tricks and stunts, and it's unsafe, particularly to people who are walking or people who are driving. And if it's at night, they often wear a black sweatshirt with a hoodie, and they're difficult to see, and they don't have lights and things like that. And so this is really about safety. I also want to say there are a lot of good kids in this community. In fact, I think the majority of the kids in this community are really good. I know when I was coming down right after Fiesta Days, I went down to Holiday Harbor. I was on a walk, and I saw a couple kids riding very safely with their helmets and riding up and down the streets. And I waved to them, and they waved back. And one of them acknowledged me. He gave me the sign language of thank you for recognizing that. And I think it's important that we do that. We recognize that too. There are a lot of good kids, and we do want to reward those kids. But we also have to address there's a lot of unsafe behavior going on, and we need to address that as well. So, with that, is there a subsidiary motion that anyone wants to make, or do we want to vote on the measure? Board comments? Well, if there's no other discussion, then we bring it to a vote. Correct.
So I do want to add one thing. This board, since I've been on it for 2 weeks, has probably spent 60% of its time talking about ways to deal with e-bikes. Okay? So it's not going to be one step. It's going to be multiple small steps. We're going to need to work with parents. We're going to need to put rules in place that can make it safer. Yes, it is inconvenient to stop at the stop sign up here in the corner, but Linda and I come to the lodge all the time, and we see some really crazy stuff going on in the parking lot. All we're asking you to do is to walk your bike from there in 1 block. Okay, I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio. 1 block I used to walk that far just to catch a bus in the snow both ways, and 1 block back. So you can't win for losing on this topic, but we have to start making small improvements. And we did get a lot of feedback that this worked very well during Fiesta Day.
I'm going to make a subsidiary motion that the initial fine for being in the parking lot not be 500, but be 250 as an initial fine. The subsequent fines of there be evasion and damage still would exist, but I will introduce the motion to reduce it from 500 to 250 as an initial for just being in a prohibited place.
Does it escalate?
Sure.
So if 250 the first incident, 500 the second?
Yes.
Progressive. Is there a second on the second subsidiary motion? Ooh. Getting a lesson in parliamentary procedure today. I'll second it. All in favor of approving this use of personal vehicles with a fine of initial occurrence of $250 for the first occurrence, $500 for the second, say aye. Aye?
Aye.
Are there any opposed?
Opposed.
Okay, 3-1.
Hearing 3 in favor, motion carries. The second
I
subsidiary.
will remind everyone, this is a 28-day reading. It does not become permanent until next month. So you have, we encourage everyone. Appreciate all the feedback we got tonight. You're welcome to continue to give us feedback, write letters to the board on that. All right. Now on to 8.2. 28-day another 28-day reading, where I thought we were when Tiffany came up.
Good evening, directors. On behalf of the Community Patrol, I'd like to thank the Board of Directors for their support in this matter and the people in this room that are applauding the efforts to provide safe environments for our children. I'm going off script, but I just had to say that we do appreciate that. Thank you. It's nice to hear the applause because we've been hearing other things previously. Board, I'd like to offer you another layer in our safety program for the community that does include an e-bike piece to it. As we know, rules are intended to regulate behaviors and activities within the community. There are specific fines associated with rules to foster adherence. Listed in this action are items or rule violations where the fines don't exactly dissuade adherence and pose an immediate or ongoing community safety issue. No change to the rules are being suggested, only to the fine schedule. For GR 2.7, 5.2, and 5.2B as attached. And just without reading the entire rule, for electric e-bike registration, the current fine is $100. The proposed fine for not, I'm sorry, let me go back in order. GR 2.7 speaks to the possession and use of fireworks in our community. And the fine is being, we're requesting the fine be increased to $1,000 for each occurrence. Lots of, and your neighbors also agree, I'm sure. GR 5.2 is prohibited vehicles. This is the section where the electric motorcycles and the actual real motorcycles get driven into our community by people and run from community patrol. That used to be, or that currently is $100 for a first offense. We'd like to propose that the fine be increased to $1,000 for each occurrence for that also. Those vehicles have no business in our community. The third is for GR 5.2B, which is the electric bicycle registration process. The current fine is $100 if you don't register your e-bike, and we're suggesting that we are proposing that go to $250 for not registering your e-bike.
Is there a motion to approve this 28-day reading? Is there a second?
Second.
Member comments? Come on up.
I don't have an e-bike and I don't have any kids with e-bikes, but like you had said, there's 900 some odd registered bikes, and my wife and I were driving down here and saw over a dozen bikes, and I saw one tag. And I'm willing to wager they weren't all from outside the gates. So there's a fine for not registering your bike. What's the fine, or did you say it and I missed it? What's the fine for registered bikes that they flipped or cut off their tags? Do we have one of those?
There is no current rule that speaks to that specifically, and we're on it. So
Okay.
I promise you, we're gonna get to that.
Kevin Thayer, 3868-507. Super happy with the prohibited vehicle. I think the fine's pretty stiff, but I think it'll make an impact. And those are the ones we don't want here. The Sarons, it's like I've point blank told somebody in my neighborhood, I live right across here in the Villas. I'm like, that's an electric motorcycle. Anyways, that's a good move. The question on the 4th of July, then, if they light fireworks, it's $2,000 because it'll be double on a holiday. $3,000. Okay, I'm not saying yea or nay, but Greg, the light bulb moment. So just think about that. The other thing is, let's advertise the this rule changes heavily, especially the $1,000 fine on the e-bikes. I think it'll make an impact, but let's not surprise people. Let's make sure that we did our effort to see it coming, so they know that they're going to get. You ride your Saron, you're going to get $1,000. I think a good move. Thank you.
Good comments, Kevin. Thank you. Yeah, and a good point. This is a 28-day reading, so this will be enacted on July 1st, which will make it effective for the 4th of July weekend. So it is a significant point. Any other member comments? Board comments or discussion?
Yeah, I think the fines are just a piece of it, right? And to the family in the back, you know, my husband and I have raised 5 kids here. And so I've seen it being here 37 years, right? And a way that we can protect, you know, the good kids from being able to do what they want to do and try to put, you know, snipe out some of this other stuff. But things like, and this is what we talked about changing, things like they don't even have to have their bike present when they get their license or their sticker. So right now, we don't even know if you do register it, that it goes onto the bike that it's currently on. Like those are the things that like are just, we have to change. There's common sense. So there are a lot of other things. Like I don't want people to leave here today and think it's just about fines or there wouldn't be a consideration for a parent. Like I think if everybody's honest with themselves, and like I said, we had 5, there's always one that's going to challenge you more. If there's a parent actively working to do something, like is there, let's call it a different program that the fine can be held in abeyance for a while we see where that goes. So we are working on other things. I just think it's really important that the fines are a part to put the teeth into the people who are flagrantly, you know, not doing anything about their kids, you know, doing donuts on the north ski deck or ripping up sinks and all of those other kinds of things. But like, just have a little faith and trust that we are spending a lot of time trying to put a lot of effort into other things besides just costing people money and trying to get in front of it, you know, rather than having to institute the fines.
Yeah, we'll address that. Yeah, we'll look at that. I had a couple of questions. What is the fine for evading?
I don't have the whole schedule in front of me, boss.
I'd like to see that be a stiff fine as well.
I think Andrea is typing as we speak.
Andre, do you know what the fine is for evading? Well, she's looking that up. My computer ran out of power, so believe it or not, a 10-hour meeting will take my battery out. So the other question I had is, I wonder, electric bicycle registration 250. Is that enough? I wonder, is that enough? I guess there's no fee for it. There's no fee to get registered, but I mean,
Correct.
and some people are registering. I just, as I look at this, I saw that go from 100 to 250. When people are, I know when we go to appeals and when they get tickets, our current fine structure is $100. Most parents are just writing a check. They don't even show up. They just write a check, which tells me it's way too low. So I'm wondering the same on this one just thinking out loud, is 250 the right level?
To answer your question,
Yeah.
evading is 250 also.
Oh, that's way too low.
Okay.
So the evading fee for evading community patrol is $250
Yeah,
currently.
Okay, let's bring that one forward for another 28-day reading next month because that needs to be much higher.
Yes. The majority of the unregistered bikes that we find is when we're working the gates. That's our biggest muscle because we can control the
Right.
access. And that's when they get that initial inspection and they have to tell us who they are. Once they're inside in the fishbowl, they
know.
will stop for us. So something, as we're thinking about this, something at the gates could help us out with how kids get into the community.
Okay, given all that, all in favor of approving the 28-day reading as written, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Could I just confirm that the first was Director Cooney? Because I didn't hear her give them. Okay, just make sure when you put your microphone so I can hear you. Thank you. Appreciate it. And then
You're so soft-spoken.
first was Director Cooney, second was Doherty, and 4 votes in favor, motion's carried. Okay.
All right. And finally, Steve, so sorry to keep you here through all this fun, this long. Help us with 8.4.
Good evening.
Morning.
Morning. Yes. Is it midnight yet? So this is for tennis court resurfacing. Make it short, the surface of the tennis courts need resurfacing. The court surface is vital for maintenance process that restores the court's safety, playability, and appearance. Over time, exposure to weather, constant play, and natural wear causes surface to crack, fade, and lose traction. Resurfacing addresses these issues by repairing the damage, applying new layers of acrylic surface material, and repainting the court lines. During this maintenance project, we will be doing a full strip of the courts, which has not been, it's not typical every 2 or 3 applications. We need to strip it back down to bare concrete. The last time we did this 4 years ago, it was just a coat over. Typically, the resurfacing is done every 4 to 7 years, depending on usage. The POA resurfaced the courts 4 years ago. We received 4 bids. Project cost would be $98,802, including a 5% contingency to come from the 026700. Staff requests the board of directors approve the funding of $98,802 plus a 5% contingency from reserve fund 026700.
Is there a motion?
That's the repair reserve fund, right? Yes, okay.
I have a question.
Motion first. We have to, before we can discuss it, we have to have a motion and a second. Is there a motion?
Motion?
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Member comments first.
I was on the tennis courts 4 years ago when they got resurfaced, and I was taking tennis lessons, and I look forward to taking it again. But the e-bikes were instantly, this is 4 years ago, when they were just starting to come around, they were an issue from day one. Beyond the fact that the resurfacing company was not the greatest. The resurfacing itself, I don't know how often it should happen, but instantly the 2 coaches, because my kids had private and I had private with 2 different, one of the internal coaches here, and both of them were like, this is a crappy job. There's no other word to describe it. So $98,000, hey, if that's what it costs, fine, but it's got to be a better job than the street surfacing, and we've got to have rules for the e-bikes or some kind of penalties. And I mean, I saw what they did with the ski decks things, but I don't want us to spend $100,000 and then us end up having e-bikes terrorize it, basically. So that's it.
Good comments. Thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah, maybe I can combine these 2 things. Is there a penalty I noticed that the pickleball courts and the tennis courts, they say no bicycles or e-bikes. I noticed we've had a lot of damage at the North Ski area from kids doing burnouts and e-bikes on, the floor. If they do that on $100,000 refurbishment of the tennis courts, that'd be devastating. Is there a fine for kids damaging POA property?
Yes, we do have fine. I don't know what the fine is, but there is a damage fine. There's a fine plus damage. I think it's 1,000.
Yeah, we have a malicious mischief sign if it's intentional, $1,000 plus the damages.
I know we don't want signs all over the place. I don't know how we can communicate to the kids that all of a sudden this has gotten to be serious and, enough's enough.
It's a good idea, actually, at the court for sure. We're going to be making signs for the lodge and Holiday Harbor e-bike ban also. So good idea. I'll throw that in the mix to add what the fines are for damaging those courts.
Did I hear it right that you're in favor of a sign? I just
Don't push your luck, Paul.
Thank you.
When it's punitive, yeah.
Any other member comments? Let's discuss it as a board.
What Steve didn't cover in his explanation was we got 4 bids, just so everyone knows. They range between, rounding off the numbers, 99,000 and 115,000, and 2 in between. And the winning bidder is called Farandel Tennis Court. So you would assume they've done 1 or 2 of these before. So this probably addresses the question that was raised about the quality of the work. First of all, it's clear we didn't get lowballed, which is a good sign, always. And hopefully those and I'm not sure if that was true. We got poor work last time. I can't speak to that, but I would like to think that that won't happen again.
I can actually speak to that because I am a tennis player, and I know last time we did not take it down to cement. We just kind of went over the top. That was one issue. The other issue is we did it in October and we had a rain. And so water gets underneath it and that causes bubbles and that's what causes the thing. It's this time, I think I applaud you, Steve, for going through and we're going to go through. And as a result, that one lasted 4 years. And that's why we're at this again. Whereas if you go down to cement, it should last 7 years. So I think that's one good thing. Do you have a question?
Yeah, my question is, do we just go with the lowest bid? Because like the cheap comes out expensive sometimes. So I'm just wondering I haven't had time in 2 weeks of being on the board to look through the bids, but like what was the distinguishing factor between what are we not getting or getting for 98,802 versus 114?
Well, normally we don't name the contractors in upsets. We just ask for funding, but the lowest bidder actually built our pickleball courts and the surface our pickleball courts. So we have a history with them, and it's the lowest bidder. So that's why we're going there.
These are not the ones that did the tennis courts last time. Is that correct?
I would have to check. I do not.
Okay. Because the pickleball
But
courts, I can't say were
I'm
done
not
very well.
100% sure.
Do they do our basketball courts as well?
I would have to check on that.
Okay. But that's like important information. Thank you.
Since you brought the pickleball courts up, I noticed, I don't know if it's been repaired, but after you resurface the pickleball courts, you put the striping down around the courts. The striping started coming up like it was tape, but it was actual paint, but it was coming up. I don't know.
I'm unaware of that problem, but
Okay.
we can look at that.
Okay, I just wanted to let you know that if that was the same company, I don't know what happened after that or if it was repaired. But everybody made comments at the pickleball courts. It was a problem.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, time to vote. And this is a financial thing, so we will do a roll call vote.
Director Medved,
Aye.
Director Doherty,
Aye.
Director Cooney,
Aye.
President Van Vliet.
Aye.
Okay, hearing four in favor, motion carried.
All right. Now for the second half of the meeting. One of the things, again, we met in orientation 2 weeks ago. One of the things we do in orientation is we have various committees that we interact with. Each committee has a staff liaison from the POA staff and a board liaison. So what we're going to do real quickly is go through and say who we are assigned to, and then next month we'll tell you what's going on in those committees. So Greg, why don't you start us off?
Recreation Committee, I am pleased to be the liaison for another year. And we have our first meeting in 2 months next week, so we've been a little bit out of touch. But I have seen the agenda. There's a couple of new ideas on there, and we also will be voting on a new member next Tuesday. So that's a nice full plate, some new projects, and we're excited. As I always say, I'm excited about this committee because we could do small things and a good handful of them for not a lot of money. So that's why it's kind of fun to do these things with them. Thank you. Okay. I will acknowledge that I'm the new liaison for the Estates Committee. I have yet to talk to the chairman or any of the members, but that's in my things to do list. Thank you.
I'm super excited. I have the Rules and the Appeals Committee. So great committees, and I'm very excited to be part of both of them, and I will be meeting with them in the upcoming meetings.
Jeff Bill, who's not here, he's on a business trip. Jeff Bill is on the finance or the Facilities Planning Committee and on the Security Advisory Committee. I am on the Greens Committee, Tuesday Work Group, and the Senior Work Group committees. That'll be next board meeting. For various, they'll come forward with the agenda in terms of various committees. I'm not sure which committee is coming forward. We won't know till next month.
Hi, my name's Bill Medved. I'm liaison to the Finance Committee, which is no surprise. I've been on it for 4 years, and I'm looking forward to trying to make some of the numbers simpler this year.
All right, Eric, it's up to you.
Okay, I'm going to make this quick. I hope everybody enjoyed Fiesta Day. I think it was another big success. We made it a little smaller and concentrated on less locations in one place on Saturday. And then I hope many people got to experience Country Fest. It was, we think, a fantastic success. The community, all the comments are positive. Could have used some more restrooms. Of course, we heard that. I think the water quality in the lake affected how many people watch from their boats and chose to use the lake as a bathroom. And so there were a lot more people on shore than we anticipated. And that was definitely a lesson learned this year. But again, thank you to Doug Schultz, who made the whole thing happen, and the board for approving really what was a historic event in Canyon Lake. If you missed it this year, don't miss it next year, because it was basically a free music festival included in your dues, which is pretty remarkable. Staff reports. I always direct people to staff reports. They start on page 42. A lot of detail in there about everything that every department is doing, starting with the community services report, the planning and compliance, security reports, operations reports. Let's see, tonight we started our summer hours here at the lodge, and Laura said they were very busy. There's about 150 people in this room and about 140 people watching between Zoom and Facebook Live. So I would say this is a record turnout for a board meeting in the 8 years that I've been here, and it happened that we opened our summer hours tonight. So I think she got a little extra business because of all the people that were here. Next Tuesday starts Taco Tuesday. The following June 14th is, I think that's next Saturday, is the e-bike fair and the firefighters golf cart show over in Town Center in front of the POA in the city. You'll be seeing more information about that. We just published our year 3 paving project. We put out the request for proposals that you can see that on our website. It's about a 150-page document. That's been advertised to, I think, about 7 specific contractors, and really anybody can submit a bid on that. That's been publicized to the community and available for anybody that wants to look at the plans and specs can look at that. And everything else is just my notes. So we'll call it an evening. Thank you guys for lasting this long. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Eric. We will finish up with board comments. Bill?
I have a couple comments. One of the subtleties that may have been missed tonight is the 3 gentlemen that were on the front table at the earlier in the afternoon or evening, I guess now. They're actually POA consultants. So we took the initiative. We went and talked to our partners and the Water District, Lejua, and we said, hey, we want to get some consultants that are available to the POA to ask specific questions. So we are trying to take the steps that we can. We're not a government entity. We're not allowed to treat the lake, but we can monitor according to the lake lease, which we talked about a little bit earlier today, and go get our own consultants so we can bring additional opinions in and so we get a good balance. Something else as well, this is a compliment to the staff and on a secondary note, the finance committee. We're getting much better at measuring our costs in the restaurants. I'm happy to report through a lot of good people's work, Saturday and Sunday, the lodge and the country club made $11,320. So that's a net income. On Monday, we lost $3,500, but that's of course a day we don't want to close just because of membership experience. But at least we have those numbers and we had them pretty quick.
Thanks, Bill. Lainey?
Glad to be here. It's a crazy night to have it be the first board meeting, but hey, that's a challenge and I'm up for it. So it's all good. I hope what's starting to, and I know at the lake that we're trying to move as urgently as we can. You know, urgency has to be in tandem with great thoughtfulness, because otherwise we end up going down rabbit holes that cause more damage than not. But I'm really excited to be here. I'm excited to the board, and I'm excited to our commitment to action. And none of us are making a career out of this. So we've got 36 months here for me to really make a difference. And let's just get started and get going.
Thanks, Lainey. Greg?
I'm going to talk about public safety for 60 seconds or so. You know, Canyon Lake's always been pretty famous or infamous for wild 4th of Julys. And up until a couple of years ago, we had some wild ones, but 2 years ago, we had a real wild one, and there was an uproar, rightfully so, that filled the room to about the capacity it was tonight. Something was done, and last year, with a lot of things implemented, and our new chief cop over there, it was a real safe 4th of July, public safety. And look what happened at Fiesta Day. We passed a resolution, and of course not entirely because of that, but I think it was a large contributor. We had a real good Fiesta Day. So on balance, our safety and security, our public safety, I think, is getting much better. I'm very happy and proud of that. Then, of course, we thought when we came up with this idea to register e-bikes, well, we thought, well, that'd be great. All we got to do is register them, and we'll just put the tag on there and pull some over and give out some citations. Hadn't worked out that way, has it? We're still struggling with it. But to Lainey's point earlier, we're trying to chip away at this a little bit at a time. And so some of these things are going to have some pain with them, higher fines and so forth. And I suppose they are meant to be painful, but that's part of how we get what we want to get to. But we talk about this e-bike thing all the time. So we have some other things in the hopper, and we're going to keep after it. I promise you.
Thank you, Greg. I want to end with a big thank you. Thank you to all the people who stayed online, who stayed here. It's a long night. the longest one we've had at a board meeting overall. And so I thank you for your time. Thank you for your comments. We do appreciate it. It helps us make better decisions as we do that. I also want to say thanks to our POA staff. They went through a week of orientation where we had how many days? 4 days in a row of 9-hour days where we went through all the topics that we talked about and then some. That was followed immediately by 2 days later by Fiesta Days, where they did all the preparations for Fiesta Days, followed by the Country Fest, where they all worked overtime through the weekends, night and day. I saw Tiffany, Ken, Zach, all the people there, and our volunteers as well. And so I don't know if everyone really appreciates how much time goes into these events, but it's an extraordinary amount. And to have the kind of what I call the triple witching of orientation, Fiesta Days, and Country Fest all in 1 week was Herculean. And thank you all for your dedication and great service to this community. And then I want to welcome our 2 newest board members. This has been an initiation by fire. And I think I can promise you the future board meetings will be a little less lengthy than this one. With that, I want to say good night. And is there a motion to adjourn?
Second.
First and second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned, 9:57.